Chapter 1166. It's this kid who bullied you? In a courtyard beside Taiji Palace, Li Zixuan hadn't even raised his head when he heard Li Yuan speak. His tone was full of indifference and casualness. Presumably, in the eyes of this former emperor, crushing Li Zixuan to death was as simple as crushing an ant. Father Emperor, it's him. At that time, I only wanted to go up Yunshan to see the fireworks and tell you about it after returning to the palace. But who knew that the Marquis of Yong relied on his imperial brother's favor to seriously injure 4 of my imperial bodyguards in public? Father Emperor, you have to uphold justice for me. Li Yuanchang immediately changed to an aggrieved expression. He didn't have the slightest bit of manliness on his body. Instead, he was like a coquettish little girl acting coquettishly in front of Li Yuan. Finished speaking, he used the corner of his eye to glare viciously at Li Zixuan. That look seemed to be saying, "Let you be proud at that time? Now I'll make you kneel and beg for mercy." Seeing this, Li Zixuan instantly felt his hands itch unbearably. If it was another occasion, he would definitely beat the shit out of this little bitch. Wasn't he just relying on the fact that he was the second generation of the imperial family? After a few years, when Li Yuan dies, let's see how you can still be arrogant. Humph. Kid, you actually dare to bully my son. You really have guts. Men. Drag him out and chop him up to feed the dogs. Without any interrogation process, he directly sentenced Li Zixuan to death. Hearing this simple sentence, Li Zixuan's heart instantly surged with hostility. This old thing wants to chop me up and feed me to the dogs? Isn't this too unreasonable? Regardless of whether he committed a crime or not, even if he beat up Li Yuanchang's subordinates for no reason, it's impossible for him to be beheaded. Li Yuan's unreasonable sentence, the civil and military officials of the imperial court wouldn't agree. Li Er wouldn't agree. The Tang Dynasty law wouldn't agree. As the person involved, Li Zixuan would even more disagree. He originally thought that Li Yuan would give him a chance to explain. Who knew that the other party didn't even look at him from beginning to end and directly wanted to chop off his head? Simply going too far. Here. At this moment, 2 strong women appeared. Yes, they were really like iron towers. They were even stronger than most men. They were just like some sumo wrestlers in Japan in his previous life. 2 strong women walked over from the side and grabbed onto Li Zixuan's arms. They wanted to drag Li Zixuan out and behead him, but the first time it did not move. The second time it still did not move. The third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, the 2 women were so tired that their foreheads were covered with a layer of sweat, but Li Zixuan was still standing there motionless. What a joke! How could an ordinary person defeat a martial arts master of the Grandmaster realm with brute force? You dare to defy the imperial decree? Li Yuan also noticed the movement on this side. He pushed aside several beautiful concubines beside him, stood up and said furiously. Li Zixuan raised his head and looked straight at Li Yuan. He said neither servile nor overbearing. Dare I ask, retired emperor, this subject only injured a few servants of Prince Liu. According to my Tang Dynasty's laws, at most I will compensate some money. Why does retired emperor want to chop off this subject's head? Li Yuan did not get angry. Instead, he laughed and said, Why? Because I am the monarch and you are the subject. If the monarch wants the subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die. You even studied the sage books in vain. Li Zixuan retorted. Killing a subject for no reason, this is what a fatuous monarch does. 12 years ago, Yang Guang caused chaos in the world. Retired emperor led 30,000 troops to rise from Taiyuan. He went to Chang'an and eradicated a group of bandits. The world is one, the will of the heavens is secondary, the people's hearts are united. It can be said that his meritorious service is unparalleled and splendid for 1,000 years. This subject believes that with retired emperor's wisdom, he will definitely not indiscriminately kill a meritorious subject. Speaking also needs to be skillful. In any era there are classes. Facing the ruling class of feudal society, if one does not talk about strategy and blindly acts recklessly, no matter how high one's martial arts is, there will only be one road to death in the palace. Listening to Li Zixuan talk about the events of the past, Li Yuan's old face that was somewhat pale due to excessive indulgence in debauchery became rosy at this moment. He closed his eyes and stood with his hands behind his back. In his mind, he could not help but recall the years of the Sui dynasty, that period of extraordinary time when he and the 18 rebellious princes fought for the throne. In the end, he took a deep breath, looked at Li Zixuan and said with a smile that was not a smile, "You brat, you really know how to talk. No wonder Erlang would think highly of you." His tone was already not as intense as before. Li Zixuan could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. The most dangerous moment had finally passed. Li Yuanchang, who was at the side, had an anxious expression. He quickly interrupted and said, "Father Emperor, don't be deceived by this fellow's flowery words. He doesn't have you in his eyes at all. Back then, Aken said that I wanted to go to Cloud Mountain to see what fireworks looked like for Father Emperor. However, not only did he not let me go, he even injured Aken. Stirring up trouble. This brat already knows how to stir up trouble at such a young age. What would happen when he grows up?" A cold light flashed in Li Zixuan's eyes. Without waiting for Li Yuanchang to finish speaking, he stepped forward and said, "Retired Emperor, Aken has something to discuss with you alone. Please dismiss your attendants." Audacious. Marquis Yong-un, you want everyone to withdraw. Could it be that you want to assassinate my father Emperor? Father Emperor, don't be afraid. Aken will protect you. A trace of anxiety flashed in Li Zixuan's eyes. He immediately jumped in front of Li Yuan and pointed at Li Zixuan and said loudly, "Damn, I didn't expect this little bastard to be so good at acting." Li Zixuan cursed in his heart. Soon after, he moved his feet slightly and instantly arrived in front of Li Yuanchang. Just as Li Yuanchang was about to cry out in fright, Li Zixuan had already returned to his original position. All of this happened in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint. It was so fast that it made people feel like it was a dream. It was as if Li Zixuan had been standing in the same spot from beginning to end and had not moved at all. The guards in the courtyard were all shocked. They quickly pulled out their mo swords from their waists and ran over to surround Li Zixuan. Facing the heavy encirclement, Li Zixuan's expression did not change. He looked at Li Yuanchang and Li Yuan and said, "Aken did not mean to offend. Aken only wanted to say that if Aken really had ill intentions towards retired Emperor, I would have already made my move. What's more, Your Highness Prince of Lu, didn't you say that you wanted to protect retired Emperor? Why are your pants wet? Where did your guts go? Or are you just putting on an act to show off how filial you are in front of retired Emperor?" As far as the eye could see, there was a puddle of water where Li Yuanchang was standing. This brat was actually scared to the point of wetting his pants. At this moment, his face was flushed red. Moreover, he was about to cry from anger because of Li Zixuan. Poison! Li Zixuan's tongue was really too poisonous. Li Yuan frowned. To be honest, at that moment, he was indeed astonished by Li Zixuan's martial arts. He did not expect that Li Zixuan's martial arts at such a young age would be stronger than some old generals. However, what made him most angry was Li Yuanchang's performance. It was said that a tiger father would not beget a dog son. He, Li Yuan, had several sons who were all heroes. However, this son in front of him was a complete coward. Too shameful. "Yuanchang, you withdraw first," Li Yuan reprimanded with a black face. Chapter 1167. Father Emperor Li Zixuan hastily wanted to argue a few more words, but Li Zixuan just happened to stab him in the back. He took a step forward, cupped his hands and said loudly, "Retired Emperor, what this subject is going to say next is related to His Highness King Lu's life and death. I hope that retired Emperor will dismiss your attendants." Once these words came out, everyone in the courtyard changed color. Li Zixuan was so scared that his little face turned white. Li Yuan stared fixedly at Li Zixuan's eyes. After a long while, he waved his hand and said, "All of you withdraw." The guards looked at each other. In the end, they still put away their weapons and withdrew from the courtyard. At this moment, Li Zixuan was no longer as arrogant as before. He also withdrew with the guards. Inside the courtyard, only Li Zixuan and Li Yuan were left. "Kid, you have guts. If you were born a dozen years earlier, there would definitely be a place for you in this vast land. Erlang might not even be able to compare to you." Li Yuan looked at Li Zixuan and said with a complicated expression. It was not that he was trying to flatter Li Zixuan, but in that confrontation just now, Li Zixuan had resolved a life-or-death situation in the blink of an eye. The courage and strategy he had displayed had made him look at him in a new light. A person who only has bravery is not scary. What's scary is bravery and strategy. This kind of person, placed in troubled times, definitely has the qualifications to become a formidable person. Li Zixuan was greatly shocked. He thought to himself, "Old thing, do you lack morals? Are you trying to kill me by saying these kinds of words? This rotten old man is very bad." Li Zixuan gave Li Yuan such a label in his heart. Retired Emperor's words are wrong. With this subject's lazy temperament, if I was born a dozen years earlier, I definitely would not be able to live until now. Only in this kind of peaceful and prosperous world can this subject's talent and knowledge have a place to display it. Li Zixuan criticized for a while in his heart, then he hurriedly stepped forward and said, regardless of whether or not there were eyes and ears in the surroundings, and regardless of whether or not Li Yuan's words were deliberately probing, in terms of basic political standpoint, he must stand in the right position. Li Yuan shook his head and did not argue with Li Zixuan on this matter. He said in a low voice, "Kid, just now you said that you had something to discuss with Zhen, and it was related to Yuan Chang's life and death. Now that Zhen has dismissed the servants, hurry up and speak. If I find out that you lied to me, I'll even get people to drag you down and chop you up to feed the dogs." Li Zixuan smiled calmly and said, "Retired Emperor, have you heard of the story of Wu Jiang Zongzi?" When Li Yuan heard that, his expression changed abruptly. Li Zixuan's words poked at that scar in his heart that had not healed all along. Li Zixuan ignored him and continued, "During the spring and autumn period, the second son of Zheng Wu Gong, Gongshu Duan, was born. His mother, Wu Jiang, had a difficult birth when giving birth to her eldest son, so she hated her eldest son, Ji Yunxing. She repeatedly asked Zheng Wu Gong to make Gongshu Duan the crown prince, but Zheng Wu Gong did not agree. After Zheng Wu Gong died, his eldest son, Ji Yunxing, ascended the throne as Zheng Zhuangong. 2 years later, Wu Jiang requested to give the capital to Gongshu Duan. After receiving permission, Gongshu Duan was able to live in the capital and wantonly expand his private power. Not long after, Gongshu Duan ordered the western and northern border regions of Zheng to listen to his commands. Zheng Dafu's son, Lu, expressed to Zheng Zhuangong that as a country's official, he could not listen to orders from both sides. If Zheng Zhuangong intended to abdicate the throne to Gongshu Duan, then he should serve him. Otherwise, he should get rid of him and not let the people have other ideas. Zheng Zhuangong, due to his mother's spoiling of his younger brother, still did not interfere. Gongshu Duan was even more unbridled. He took 2 lands as his fief, and the area under his control expanded to Linyan. In the 5th month of the 49th year of King Ping of Zhou, Gongshu Duan reorganized the city walls, accumulated food, repaired equipment and weapons, and replenished the infantry chariots, preparing to attack the capital of Zheng. He also contacted Wu Jiang in the capital as a spy and had her open the city gates at that time. When Zheng Zhuanggong heard the date of Gongshu Duan's attack, he ordered Zheng Dafu's son, Lu, to lead 200 chariots to attack the capital city. Gongshu Duan was defeated and fled to Yin. Zheng Zhuanggong led his troops to pursue and win. After that, Gongshu Duan fled to live in Gongyi. Zhuanggong sent out his troops to pursue and kill him. In the end, Gongshu Duan was driven to a dead end and was forced to commit suicide. Silence. After Li Zishuan's voice fell, the courtyard suddenly sunk into a strange silence. Li Yuan stared fixedly at him. His eyes also stared unblinkingly at Li Yuan. His purpose in telling this story was to tell Li Yuan that his excessive spoiling of Li Yuanchang was only pushing him step by step toward the edge of the abyss of death. When he, Li Yuan, passed away one day and could no longer protect Li Yuanchang, if Li Yuanchang was still so jumpy and liked to stir up trouble everywhere, then he, Li Yuanchang, would be the next Gongshu Duan. This was not an exaggeration to scare people. The Li Yuanchang of history, because of Li Yuan's excessive spoiling when he was alive, caused him to forget himself and lose his reverence. As a result, in the 17th year of Zhenguan, together with Du He, Zhao Jie, Li Anyun, and the others, he suggested Crown Prince Li Chengqian to rebel. Hexen Chengji reported the Crown Prince's rebellion, and Li Yuanchang, Du He, Ho Junji, and the others were all beheaded for the crime of rebellion. Imperial grandfather, have mercy ah! At this moment, a clear and melodious female voice, like the chirping of an oriole, broke the silence. Changle, who was wearing a thick fur coat, was running quickly towards them. Behind her were Li Tai, Li Ku, and Li Qingqian. Aya! When Changle was running in front of the two, she accidentally tripped over a protruding stone tile on the ground, and her entire body was about to crash into the limestone floor in front of her. Princess, be careful! In a flash, Li Zishuan shot forward and arrived in front of Changle. He firmly grabbed the latter's shoulder with one hand, preventing her from falling. Brother Xiaoxian, you're fine? That's great. Changle took a few quick breaths, turned her head to look at Li Zishuan, and said happily. Li Zishuan frowned, because he could sense that Changle's breathing was extremely chaotic. When he thought about how this little girl had run all the way here from Changle Palace in the middle of winter, his expression changed, and he hurriedly said, Changle, don't speak. Quickly calm your breathing and focus your mind. It would have been better if he hadn't said anything, but now that he said it, Changle's face instantly turned ghastly pale. She bent over and clutched her chest, and then she coughed violently. She then said with a pained expression, Cough, cough, cough. Brother Xiaoxian. Changle's chest is so stuffy, huff, huff, huff. As she spoke, her breathing became shorter and shorter, more and more hurried. Changle, what's wrong? At this time, Li Yuan also quickly rushed over. He looked at the pale Changle, and said with an anxious expression. Li Qingqian and Li Tai had only just caught up, and the two of them anxiously said, Changle's qi is acting up. Someone, quickly call the imperial physician. At this time, how could Li Zishuan still care about the propriety between men and women? What's more, Changle was only a little girl. He never had that kind of thought. At the critical moment, he carried Changle up from the ground in a princess carry. He said anxiously to Li Yuan, Retired Emperor, where is a warm side room? Changle can't breathe in cold air right now, or else her life will be in danger. Li Yuan had always doted on Changle. When he heard Li Zishuan's words, his face that was always calm also panicked a little. He pointed at the palace in the north, and as he ran, he shouted at Li Zishuan, Quick! Quickly follow Zhen. Zhen's bedroom has heating. Chapter 1168. The biggest taboo for asthma patients in winter was to stay outside for a long time and inhale large amounts of cold air. Changle ran all the way from Changle Palace to Taiji Palace just now. Her speed was even faster than Li Tai and Li Qingqian. Under such intense exercise, her trachea and lungs would naturally be filled with a large amount of cold air. In addition, the little girl's qi disease had been hidden for a year. Now that it met with such an opportunity, it immediately erupted like a flood and ferocious beast. Illness comes like a landslide. This was Changle's current situation. Just a moment ago, she was still a lively and cute little girl. Now, she could only sit on the bed and cough violently. Even breathing was difficult. Imperial physician. Where's the imperial physician? Quickly call the imperial physician. At this moment, Li Yuan's face no longer had the previous indifference and relaxation. He anxiously paced around the room and shouted to the servants in the room. It's useless even if the imperial physician comes. Li Zishuan, who was sitting by the bed and placing his hand on Changle's white wrist, hurriedly said, "Retired Emperor, Changle's qi disease this time is very fierce. I'll first use true qi to help her recuperate. Quickly send someone out of the city to Yunshan to invite Sun Daozhong." Today was the 5th day of the Lunar New Year. Sun Simiao did not go out to do volunteer medical treatment. At this time, Li Yuan had already put down his airs, because although he was imprisoned in the depths of the palace, he had also heard that Li Zishuan had once seized blood to extend his life, saved Qin Xiong, and quelled the cholera with his own strength. Now, he was completely responding to whatever Li Zishuan said. Whatever he wanted, he would give. Because Changle was not only Li Er and Changsuan's favorite, she was also Li Yuan's favorite. What are you still standing there for? Quickly go. Quickly ride a horse to Yunshan. Invite Sun Daozhong over for Zhen. If anything happens to Changle today, none of you can think about living. All the eunuchs, palace maids, and servants' expressions changed. The old woman who previously brought Li Zishuan into the palace hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Yes." Then she turned around and walked out of the room. "Imperial grandfather, let Kuer go. Kuer has martial arts and is good at horsemanship. Going back and forth can save a lot of time." Li Ku stood up and volunteered. Li Yuan's eyes lit up and he said, "Good. Kuer, quickly ride on my carefree horse and quickly go to Cloud Mountain to invite Daoist Sun." The carefree horse was Li Yuan's mount. It was gifted to Li Er for a period of time, but Li Er returned it after ascending the throne. Li Ku solemnly cupped his fists and said, "Yes, father." After saying that, Li Ku rushed out of the house in a flash. On the bed, Changle leaned on one of Li Zishuan's hands. She closed her eyes and coughed less violently than before. However, she was still short of breath, as if the air in the room was not enough for her to breathe. Li Zishuan supported Changle's back with one hand and massaged a part of her back with the other hand. Of course, he was not massaging through the thick snow fur coat. When they entered the room, Changle's coat had been taken off by the maidservants. She was still wearing a white silk undergarment. It was not out of line. "Brat, how is Changle now?" Under the critical situation, Li Yuan could not care about those messy things. Moreover, Changle was still young. Everyone still treated her as a child. Retired Emperor. With the princess's current situation, only Daoist Sun can use the golden needle to guide qi into her body to help her calm down the chaotic yin qi in her body. This subject can only massage the Fengmen acupoint to calm the princess's cough and stall for time for the princess. Everything can only be done when Daoist Sun arrives. Large beads of sweat rolled down Li Zishuan's forehead. A few beads of sweat rolled into his eyes. He only blinked his eyes and did not stop the movements of his hands at all. Just now, he said it was easy, but only he, the person involved, knew how hard it was to do it. Fengmen, also known as hothouse, backhouse, hothouse acupoint, belonged to the bladder meridian of the foot. It was the intersection point between the foot's Taiyang meridian and the Du meridian. Feng, the qi and blood of the body were mainly wind. Fengmen, it referred to the door of entry and exit. The Fengmen acupoint referred to the flow of qi and blood of the arm. Massaging the Fengmen acupoint was very effective in treating asthma. What Li Zixuan was doing now was not only massage, but also transferring qi. He was using the true qi in his body to help Chang'e straighten out the chaotic yin qi in her body. If he transferred qi too quickly, it would definitely hurt Chang'e's meridians. If he transferred qi too slowly, it would greatly affect the effect. Moreover, it was even harder to control the strength now that it was separated by clothes. Even with Li Zixuan's martial cultivation at the Grandmaster realm, he could faintly feel a trace of strain at this moment. He could not let Chang'e die. When he thought of the little girl running all the way here just to save him from Li Yuan's hands, he felt a stab of pain in his heart. At this moment, he somewhat regretted that he did not learn Sun Simiao's set of golden needle technique previously, because at this moment, if he used the golden needle to guide qi into her body, he could not say that he could completely cure Chang'e's qi, but he was absolutely confident that he could pull Chang'e back from the gates of hell. What are you all in a daze for? Quickly go wipe the sweat of this brat, for the Marquis of Yong'an. When Li Yuan saw that Li Zixuan was working so hard, he could not help but have a trace of favorable impression of this junior in his heart. Thus, he berated his group of concubines. These concubines were merely playthings that he had gathered during his imprisonment. He did not care at all. Li Zixuan's eyebrows twitched and he hurriedly said, Don't. This subject appreciates retired emperor's good intentions. This subject cannot be distracted right now. I would like to trouble retired emperor to let irrelevant people withdraw. What a joke. No matter what, they were Li Yuan's women. He was not willing to have anything to do with these women at all. Li Yuan said to everyone in the room, half believing and half doubting, all of you withdraw. Yes. The chamberlains, palace maids, servant women, and the group of concubines all withdrew. Chang'e. How is Chang'e? Not long after, a series of hurried footsteps and Li Er's anxious shout came from outside the room. Following that, Li Er walked in with long strides, followed by Empress Zhongsun. Greetings to Imperial Father. Greetings to Imperial Mother. Li Tai and Li Chengqian saluted one after another. Li Er waved his hand. When he saw Chang'e with her eyes tightly closed on the bed, as well as Li Zixuan behind Chang'e who was sweating profusely, his heart ached. He looked at Li Yuan and said, Imperial Father, how is Chang'e now? Her life is not in danger for the time being. Li Yuan replied and then said unhappily, How are you a father? You clearly know that Chang'e has a qi disease, but you did not send people to take good care of her. You actually let her run around in this cold weather. Do you still have this daughter in your heart? Li Er was stunned and almost cursed. He thought in his heart, if you did not bring Li Zixuan here, would Chang'e run over in a hurry? This son did not think it through. Imperial Father, please calm down. After a long time, Li Er finally lowered his head and admitted his mistake. Chapter 1169. When a person found it difficult to breathe, their consciousness would soon become blurry. Chang'e was in such a state now. She felt that the air around her had solidified. It was difficult for her to take in a breath of fresh air. Her consciousness gradually became blurry, but the only thing that made her feel comfortable was the warm hands on her back. She could vaguely feel that the hands were sending waves of invisible energy to her, helping her to absorb the air in the room. A glimmer of hope suddenly appeared in the crisis of certain death. She didn't want to die. She vaguely remembered that she was carried in by that man. His chest was so warm, and his breath intoxicated her. She hadn't had enough, so she didn't want to die like this. She wanted to live. She wanted to live. Don't sleep. I don't want to die. If I die, I won't be able to see him again. I don't want to die. A strong desire to live suddenly erupted in this delicate body. Along with the waves of invisible energy, Changle breathed desperately, desperately trying to absorb the vitality between heaven and earth. Her weak pulse and heartbeat were suddenly fed back to Li Zixuan's hands with great strength. Changle, don't give up. As long as you don't give up, no one in this world can take you away from me. Not even the King of Hell can. While she was in a daze, Changle heard a familiar voice by her ear. That voice sounded so gentle, yet so confident and resolute. Yes. Using all her strength, Changle responded to Li Zixuan's encouragement with a soft Your Majesty, Changle is awake. I just heard her voice. Zhang Sun, who was guarding at the side, held Li Er's hands excitedly. It had been nearly an hour since Changle's accident. For a moment, they saw Li Zixuan's face become very ugly. Without asking, they knew that Changle's situation had worsened. However, Li Zixuan did not give up. He continued to massage Changle's Fengmen acupoint repeatedly and continuously transferred qi to her. At this moment, Li Zixuan's face was extremely pale, but there was a trace of joy between his brows. Obviously, Changle had been saved from the most dangerous situation. Where is Ku'er? Has Ku'er returned to the city? Li Er patted Zhang Suan's shoulder, but the worry between his brows did not fade away. He knew that Changle was only temporarily out of danger. If she wanted to be completely cured, Sun Simiao had to come over. Your Majesty, it would take at least 6/4 of an hour to travel from Chang unto Yun Mountain, even on a fast horse. His Highness King of Han shouldn't have reached Chang, and yet. Zhao Song stepped forward and cupped his fists. 60 minutes. Li Er's face sank, his expression filled with anxiety. He looked at Zhao Song and whispered, In your opinion, how much longer can the Marquis of Yong'an hold on? This, Zhao Song looked troubled. He looked at Li Zixuan, gritted his teeth and said, Your Majesty, actually, with the Marquis of Yong'an middle stage strength, it is reasonable to say that he can't hold on after such a great loss. This old servant thinks that he should be holding on with his mind at this moment. Hearing this, Li Er's expression changed slightly. When the Turkic army came to Chang'an, he was not anxious. At this moment, beads of sweat appeared on his forehead from anxiety. At this moment, he caught a glimpse of Li Yuanchang, who was standing in the corner and pretending to be an invisible person, without saying a word. A trace of killing intent suddenly appeared in his eyes. The root of all today's problems was this brat. Li Er had just finished the morning court today when he learned that Li Zixuan had been invited from Yunshan to the palace by the people sent by Li Yuan. He thought for a moment and understood that it must be Li Yuanchang behind this. After all, he was also present at the conflict at the foot of Yunshan on New Year's Eve. After guessing the cause and effect of this matter, Li Er did not take it to heart. Because in his opinion, Li Yuan would at most admonish Li Zixuan, and he was too lazy to come over and do something unnecessary. If things went wrong, he might even be ridiculed by Li Yuan. But who knew that in the end it would cause such a big mess? His most beloved pearl in his palm almost lost her life because of this. And all this was because Li Yuanchang was stirring up trouble. Feeling Li Er's gaze, which was as though he wanted to eat him alive, Li Yuanchang's forehead started to sweat profusely. His little face turned pale in an instant, and at the same time, his legs started to tremble non-stop. Suddenly, a foul stench came from within the house. It was Li Yuanchang who had wet his pants again. Cough, cough. Li Yuan glanced at Li Er, then looked at Li Yuanchang with a complicated gaze. He scolded in a low voice, Get out! Letting him out was both an exile and protection. Yes, father. As if he had been granted amnesty, Li Yuanchang did not even have the courage to look at Li Er and went out dejectedly. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! The King of Han and Dr. Sun have entered the city. At this moment, a chamberlain ran in from outside the room and bowed to Li Er with a face full of joy. They're here. They're finally here. Hurry! Order people to open all the gates of the palace and give special permission for the King of Han and Dr. Sun to ride horses in the palace today. All guards are not allowed to stop the two of them. Violators will be beheaded." Li Er was shocked and said with unusual joy, "Yes, sir." The chamberlain hurriedly went out to pass on the decree. Bam! Marquis Yong-un? Marquis Yong-un! Guards! Hurry! Help Marquis Yong-un to rest. Hurry and call the imperial physician. At the same time, Zhang Xuan's anxious shout came from behind Li Er. Li Er turned around and saw that Li Zixuan had fainted on the bed, and Chang'e had fallen onto Li Zixuan due to inertia. It turned out that when he heard the chamberlain outside the door saying that Li Zixuan and Sun Simiao had entered the city, Li Zixuan finally heaved a huge sigh of relief. However, what followed was a deep sense of exhaustion. He had never been as tired as he was now, and finally, he could not help but faint. "Hurry! Help Marquis Yong-un to the side hall to rest," Li Er instructed Zhao Song. "Yes, Your Majesty." On the other side, Zhang Sun helped Chang'e up from Li Zixuan's body. Zhao Song walked over and carried Li Zixuan on his back, then walked toward a side room. "Grandfather, Dr. Sun is here." "Father? You're here too." After so much waiting, Li Ke had finally returned with reinforcements. When he saw Li Er at the door, he hurriedly bowed and said. Li Er nodded and greeted Sun Simiao, who was behind Li Ke, with a solemn expression. "Priest Sun, Chang'e's condition has suddenly worsened. Please save her no matter what." I've already heard the King of Han explain the cause and effect on the way here. Your Majesty, please allow me to take the princess's pulse first." Sun Simiao's beard and hair were all messed up from being carried by Li Ke all the way here. At this moment, he did not bother to tidy up his appearance and went forward to take Chang'e's pulse. Chapter 1170. Dr. Sun, how is Chang'e? In Li Yuan's bedroom, after Sun Simiao finished the acupuncture, his expression was somewhat dispirited. Li Er did not have the time to pay attention to Sun Simiao's expression at this moment. He hurriedly walked forward and asked. Sun Simiao smiled and went to the side to wash his hands unhurriedly before saying, "This humble Taoist congratulates Your Majesty." Li Er frowned and said, "May I ask, what is there to congratulate me about?" Sun Simiao stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Your Majesty, although the princess's qi disease came fiercely today, fortunately, the Marquis of Yong-un delivered qi in time to nurse the princess's internal breathing. In addition, the princess's desire to live is very tenacious. Currently, there is no major problem. Compared to last year, the princess's physique has greatly improved. When this humble Taoist was performing acupuncture just now, I actually felt a trace of extremely weak Taoist true qi in her body. If this humble Taoist had not practiced medicine for decades and was extremely sensitive to qi, I'm afraid I would not have been able to detect the existence of this trace of true qi." "What?" Li Er's eyes widened in shock and said incredulously, "There is Taoist true qi in Chang'e's body? Could it be the Marquis of Yong-un's true qi?" Sun Simiao smiled and shook his head, saying, "Absolutely not. The Marquis of Yong-un's true qi is pure and majestic, but the true qi that this humble Taoist felt just now was soft and weak. This should be the true qi that the princess cultivated herself. In other words, the princess might have unintentionally stepped into the martial artist's realm of drawing qi into the body." Drawing qi into the body. When these words came out, the entire room was shocked. Everyone, including Li Yuan, all widened their eyes and were inexplicably shocked. The Tangs revered martial arts. There were so many martial artists in the world, but compared to the huge population, the proportion of martial artists was still very low. Martial artists who could cultivate true qi were even fewer. An originally soft and weak little girl suddenly became a martial artist with true qi. No matter how one listened to it, it felt inconceivable. How is this possible? Changle has never practiced martial arts in this year. How can she cultivate true qi in her body? Waves of shock surged in Li Er's heart. He still found it hard to accept this reality. No. Your Majesty. Changle has practiced it. She practiced Taiji Fist for half a year. Empress Zhongsun suddenly thought of something and quickly added. Taiji Fist. Sun Simiao's eyes lit up and his face suddenly became excited. If that's the case, then it makes sense. Last year, I saw Taiji Fist in the academy. This fist technique contains the Taoist theory of yin and yang. It can be both yin and yang. It can nourish one's qi and build one's body. Its effect is no less than the 5 animal frolics. Your Highness's Taoist heart is bright. It is not surprising that you can understand the essence of the Taiji Fist and cultivate a trace of Taoist true qi. There's such a thing. After listening to Sun Simiao's analysis, Li Er felt a little incredulous. Dr. Sun, doesn't that mean that if the Empress persists in practicing Taiji Fist every day, she will also be able to cultivate Taoist true qi and strengthen her ability to resist qi disease? The illness of Empress Zhongsun and Changle had always been a thorn in Li Er's heart. He was always worried that the 2 most important people in his life would suddenly leave him one day. At this moment, hearing Sun Simiao say that Changle had cultivated genuine qi because of Taiji Fist, Li Er suddenly had the idea of letting Empress Zhongsun follow suit. Sun Simiao shook his head. Of course not. Taiji Fist is exquisite, but in my opinion, those who can rely on Taiji Fist to cultivate genuine qi are absolutely 1 in a million. Your Highness is a very special case. Haha. Under various coincidences, Your Highness's qi disease has taken a huge turn for the better. With a little treatment in the future, it is very likely that she will completely recover. Right, just now I also found that Your Highness's heart and lungs are much more energetic than before. I wonder if Your Majesty and Her Highness have given Your Highness any supplements to strengthen your heart and lungs in the past year? If it were not for this, Your Highness would be in great danger today. When Li Er heard that Changle might completely recover, he was naturally happy. However, after listening to the second half of Sun Simiao's words, he frowned and fell into deep thought. After thinking for a while, he shook his head and said, There has been no change in Changle's diet. I have also never heard of anything in this world that can help Changle treat her qi disease and strengthen her heart and lungs. Your Majesty, Divine Dr. Sun definitely wouldn't say something that wasn't true. There must be some details that we've forgotten. Wait for me to call Changle's personal maid over. She knows Changle's usual diet the best. We will know after asking her. Empress Zhongsun thought for a long time but couldn't think of anything. However, she believed that Sun Simiao wouldn't talk nonsense, so she suggested. Come. Quickly call Li Er over. Empress Zhongsun shouted and ordered. Yes. After a while, Changle's personal maid was brought in by an inner attendant. Without waiting for her to greet him, Li Er asked directly, I'm here to ask you, is there anything unusual about Changle's diet in the past few months? It had been more than 2 hours since Changle fell into a coma. Those who were well informed in the palace knew that something had happened to Changle. At this moment, hearing Li Er's question, Li Er was almost scared to death because she subconsciously thought that Li Er was suspecting that Changle's accident was related to her daily diet. Her face suddenly turned pale. Your Majesty, this servant has personally tasted Princess's daily diet. It is absolutely. Haha. Li Er, don't be nervous. His Majesty doesn't mean to blame you. Moreover, Changle is doing very well now. His Majesty and I just want to ask if Changle has eaten anything unusual but very beneficial to her body recently. Empress Zhongsun saw Li Er's nervous face and knew that this girl was thinking wrongly. She smiled and comforted her. Li Er heaved a sigh of relief. She blinked her eyes and thought seriously. Suddenly she said, Your Majesty, this servant remembers. If there is anything unusual that Her Highness the Princess has eaten in the past 6 months, it is only fried locusts. Last autumn, ever since Marquis Yong advised Her Highness to eat more fried locusts, Her Highness the Princess has to eat one serving every day. Locusts! Li Er's expression shook. He clapped his hands and said, I also remember. Last year, Marquis Yong said that eating locusts is beneficial to treating qi disease. Dr. Sun, I wonder if there is such a saying? Sun Simiao frowned. He closed his eyes and pondered for a while with a serious expression. Suddenly, he said with a joyful face, Locusts have a warm nature and can open orifices. It is indeed a good medicine to treat qi disease. Why didn't I think of it in the past? Marquis Yong is really a medical prodigy. If he is willing to study medicine wholeheartedly, his medical skills will definitely not be inferior to mine in the future. Dr. Sun, go take a look at Marquis Yong. I reckon that he is already exhausted to the point of collapse. Li Er looked towards the side hall and sighed faintly. He thought to himself, looks like I have wronged Li Zishuan in the past. However, it was impossible for him to apologize. He was the emperor, so how could he apologize to others? At most, he would give Li Zishuan more compensation in other aspects in the future. Chapter 1171. Sun Simiao was right. It was indeed 1 in a million to be able to sense qi with Taiji fist alone. Chang'e was able to create miracles mainly because she didn't want to die. Moreover, she worshipped Li Zishuan unconditionally. Since Li Zishuan said that Taiji fist was beneficial to resisting qi disease, she naturally had to practice it seriously every day. She never had any doubts in her heart. All she needed to think about was practicing hard every day. She couldn't relax for even a day. Perhaps it was because of this pure worship and persistent pursuit that she could become the lucky 1 in a million, and also give her the opportunity to completely get rid of qi disease. Even in the 21st century, with the advanced medical conditions, she was considered a miracle in the medical field. Why hasn't my husband come back yet? Did something happen in the palace? I heard that my husband injured King of Luzgard. This time, the retired emperor suddenly summoned my husband. Is he deliberately making things difficult for my husband to vent his anger for King of Lu? In the Yunshan residence, it was almost noon. Han Yushi still hadn't seen Li Zishuan return. She became more and more worried. Thinking of the conflict between Li Zishuan and Li Yuanchang, Han Yushi's heart gradually sank. Yushi! What did Xian go to Chang'an for? Why hasn't he come back yet? Mrs. Li felt that Han Yushi's expression was a little abnormal, so she asked. Mother! My husband just went to Chang'an to explain some things to the members of the Chamber of Commerce. He should be back in the afternoon. Let's eat first. It won't be good if it gets cold. Han Yushi said hurriedly. This was also what Li Zishuan told her before he left. The purpose was to not let the family worry. Oh, in that case, let's eat first. Mrs. Li replied suspiciously. Yi Guozhong's eyes flashed. He said thoughtfully, Xiao Xian is now grounded. How could he leave Yunshan? Yushi, tell me honestly, did something happen to Xiao Xian? Tell us and we can help him together. Indeed, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Yi Guozhong instantly noticed the loophole in Han Yushi's words. As soon as she finished speaking, everyone in the family turned to look at Han Yushi. Han Yushi immediately felt as if she was sitting on pins and needles. She hesitated for a moment before telling the truth. Father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, hubby today. As Han Yushi spoke, the expressions of Yi Guozhong, Li Jingma, and the others gradually turned solemn. In the end, Yi Guozhong said, There's no need to overthink it. It's definitely the retired emperor who was instigated by His Highness King Lu to summon little Xian into the palace for revenge. Mrs. Li suddenly panicked and hurriedly asked, Father? In that case, what should he do? We have to think of a way to save Xian. Yi Guozhong heaved a sigh and shook his head. The palace is heavily guarded. How can ordinary citizens like us enter the palace to save little Xian? Seeing Mrs. Li's gloomy face, Yi Guozhong couldn't bear to say, Yuzhu, you and Jingma don't have to worry too much. Although the retired emperor can decide the life and death of anyone, now that His Majesty is in power and little Xian is deeply favored by His Majesty, it's impossible for His Majesty to not know about him entering the palace. When the time comes, he will definitely not sit idly by. Hearing this, everyone was slightly relieved. Suddenly, Lan'er said, Father, Mother, Lan'er saw Brother Xiaoke riding down the mountain with Grandpa's son in the morning. Is someone sick? Brother and Doctor's son went to see a doctor? What? Priest's son was also invited into the palace? Yi Guozhong frowned. If that was the case, the situation would be even more complicated. Li Zixuan had a dream. It was a very long dream. In the dream, he returned to the modern era. But with him, he returned to the modern era with his martial arts, his family, friends, and Li Er. In the dream, he brought a group of ancient people to the modern era to go shopping, sit in the car, watch television, play games, and have a lot of fun. This dream seemed to have no end. Time passed quickly in the dream. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, until a few decades later. At that time, the group of Tang Dynasty people that he brought to the modern era all told him that they wanted to go back to the Tang Dynasty. Because although the Tang Dynasty was more backward than the modern era, it was still their Tang Dynasty. Their Tang Dynasty. In the end, everyone went back, and he was the only one left in the modern world. Loneliness, helplessness, coldness, loneliness, all kinds of negative emotions lingered in his heart. Even though he was dreaming, his expression was still full of sadness. I want to go back too. That is also my Tang Dynasty. Li Zixuan in the dream suddenly said firmly. Little Xian. Little Xian. Li Zixuan, who was sleeping, suddenly heard a familiar call. Gradually, he opened his eyes with great effort and saw a white-bearded old Taoist sitting by the bed, looking at him with a smile. Who else could it be other than Sun Simiao? Little Xian. You're finally awake? Sun Simiao smiled gently. Li Zixuan suddenly realized that everything seemed to have returned to the beginning. Last spring, when he first came to this world, the first person he saw when he opened his eyes was also Sun Simiao. And at that time, Sun Simiao was also treating him. Everything was so similar. Taoist son, thank you so much. You've saved my life again. Li Zixuan struggled to pull his hands out and saluted Sun Simiao. His voice was very weak. Sun Simiao made a rare joke and said, Okay. You don't have to be so polite with me. Take care of yourself first. Otherwise, who will help me build the Tang Dynasty Joint Medical Center? Li Zixuan smiled and said, Oh right. Taoist priest, is Chang'e out of danger? Of course, he had confidence in Sun Simiao's golden needle technique. This was just a casual question. Sun Simiao smiled and said, She's out of danger? Little Xian, I'll tell you a piece of good news. This time, I'm very confident that the princess's qi will be completely cured. How is this possible? Li Zixuan found it hard to believe. After all, even in modern times, it was impossible to completely cure asthma. I never lie. Little Xian, take care of yourself for a while. I'll go back to Yunshan after prescribing a medicine for the princess. Sun Simiao said casually. Not long after, old man's son left, but Li Yuan came. He walked straight to the side of Li Zixuan's bed and laughed loudly. Yo! You're awake. Not bad. Good job. Luckily, you're here today. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I'll lose Chang'e forever. Even if Erlang doesn't reward you, I'll reward you. Say it, what do you want? As long as I have it, I'll reward you. Chapter 1172. Taiji Palace, Li Yuan's bedroom. Looking at the smiling Li Yuan in front of him, Li Zishuan secretly curled his lip. He thought to himself, just now you, this rotten old man, should have wanted to chop off this young master's head. Now your face changes really quickly. Retired Emperor, this subject is on good terms with Qin Ke and the Crown Prince. Saving the princess is a matter of course. I don't ask for any reward. Li Zishuan felt that his body had already recovered some strength. Thus, he got off the bed and cupped his hands towards Li Yuan. In order to avoid some criticism, he could only involve Li Tai and Li Chengqian. Li Yuan's eyes glared, and he said unhappily, "What? You think Zhen can't give you a reward?" Although Zhen can't leave the palace now, Zhen still has all kinds of treasures and wealth. If you want beauties, Zhen can also give you hundreds. If you want to be promoted, Zhen will speak to Erlang. I don't think he will disobey Zhen. Hey! This old geezer is really narcissistic. Li Zishuan didn't want to be entangled with Li Yuan on this matter. He quickly said, "Retired Emperor, this subject definitely didn't mean that. This subject is now deeply indebted to the Emperor. Wealth, official titles, and beauties are not lacking. Therefore, this subject really doesn't need a reward." He was very clear in his heart that whether it was official titles or wealth, he had already reached a peak. Advancing further would definitely be a disaster and not a blessing. Moreover, he didn't save Chang'e for a reward. He just felt sorry for this little girl who had been suffering from illness all this time. It's rare for you to be modest today. However, what should be rewarded should still be rewarded. At this moment, Li Er walked in with Empress Zhongsun, Li Chengqian, Li Tai and Li Ku. Li Er's face was flushed red, as if he had won a battle. He came in front of Li Zishuan and said, "Today, not only did you save Chang'e, but because of you, there is hope that Chang'e's illness can be completely cured. This can be considered to have solved one of Zhen's worries. You should be rewarded. And you must be heavily rewarded." He did have a reason to be happy. Chang'e's recovery gave him hope, because Empress Zhongsuan's situation was exactly the same as Chang'e's. Now, with Chang'e's example, there was hope for Empress Zhongsuan's illness to be cured. Actually, Li Zishuan just wanted to go home as soon as possible. He was about to reject him when Li Er waved his hand and said, "I know you don't lack anything now, but I still want to reward you. How about this? Now that you have 8 villages under you, we might as well bestow all of Lantian County to you." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone, including Li Zishuan, was stunned. There was no other reason. This reward was simply too shocking. How big was Lantian County? This wasn't easy to measure at the moment, but the most direct measurement was population. Lantian County was considered a large county, and there were at least 50 to 60,000 people in the county. If converted into households, there were at least 10,000 households. Although Li Zishuan's current title was only that of a marquis, he could live in 10,000 households. This was a treatment that even ordinary princes couldn't enjoy. Furthermore, Lantian County was close to Chang'an, and its geographical location was rather important. Yet, Li Er gave it to Li Zishuan as his fief. This kind of generosity was not small. It could be said that just based on this reward, Li Er treated Li Zishuan better than his own son. As such, Li Zishuan could be said to have become the second largest landlord in Great Tang. The first was of course Li Er. In terms of land, no one could compare to him. After all, he had a vast territory. "Your Majesty, please retract your order. This subject dares not accept such a heavy reward." Li Zishuan's heart trembled. After a moment, he hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "The bigger the bowl, the bigger the rice." Li Zishuan knew very well that the current him definitely couldn't enjoy such a large fief. Even if he agreed to Li Er's reward today, in the future, the court would definitely not agree to it. This reward was too big, to the point that no one could accept it. Our words carry enormous weight. Since it's given to you, you should accept it. As for the rest, if they have any objections, tell them to look for us. Others might think that this reward was too heavy, but Li Er didn't think it was heavy at all. After all, Li Zishuan had saved the two most important people in his life. A few years ago, when Chang'e and Changsun were suffering from illness, he even thought that as long as someone could completely cure their illness, he would be willing to give half of the country. Now this was just Lantian County. Even if the court officials had objections, he would still insist on such a reward. Everyone had their own selfish motives, and Li Er was no exception. For the sake of his loved ones, he would definitely not regret being selfish for once. Your Majesty, Li Zishuan wanted to say more, but Li Er waved his hand and said, Enough, there's no need to say any more. Giving you Lantian County, other than because you cured Chang'e's illness, another reason is that us heard that you're very good at governing a place. Right now, Plum Village, Han Family Manor, and the rest of your fiefs have all become rich lands that everyone in the vicinity of Chang'e is envious of. We have bestowed the entire Lantian County to you in hopes that you can continue to work hard and help us manage this county well. You've exhausted yourself today, us won't keep you any longer. Go back and rest early. Then, this official will take his leave. At this point, Li Zishuan knew that no matter how he tried to persuade Li Er wouldn't change his mind. In fact, he also secretly hoped that his fief could be bigger, but he couldn't tell the exact reason. Perhaps this was the special plot that Chinese people had towards land. He just hoped that in the later court meetings, when the civil and military officials quarreled with Li Er over this matter, they wouldn't drag him into it. After cupping his hands towards Li Er, Empress Zhangsun, and Li Yuan, Li Zishuan walked out of the room. Li Chengqian, Li Tai, and Li Ku followed closely behind. Little Xian, it's all thanks to you today. I owe you for this. He's yours. If you need anything, as long as it's within my power, I definitely won't hesitate. Li Chengqian said with a face full of joy. Li Zishuan frowned and couldn't help but say, Chengqian, I already told retired Emperor earlier that saving Chang'e was because of friendship. Moreover, you're the heir to the throne. I hope that you won't make this kind of promise to anyone under any circumstances. It's not good for you. Li Chengqian was a bit too excited just now. He also knew that Li Zishuan's words made sense. Hearing this, he said embarrassedly, Little Xian, you're right. Then I'll prepare a table of good wine some other day to thank you for saving Chang'e today. How about it? Li Zishuan laughed loudly and said, Ha ha, drinking wine is fine. Just don't make me pay the bill when the time comes. Li Chengqian laughed in spite of himself and said, Little Xian, you're joking. Even if it was a year ago, I could still afford to treat you to a drink. Li Zishuan smiled but didn't say anything. Then he looked towards Li Tai and Li Ku. His gaze was slightly heavy as he asked, How did Chang'e know that I was here? Was it you who reported the news? She ran all the way from Chang'e Palace to here. Why didn't you stop her? Don't you know that she has an illness and can't stand the cold wind? Chapter 1173. On the arched bridge in front of Taiji Palace, Li Tai and Li Ku, the two grand princes, were trembling in fear in front of Li Zishuan, a marquis. If this scene was seen by others, their jaws would drop to the ground. Mountain Elder, it was Chang'e who told Shao Ku and me before that if little royal uncle were to find trouble with you, we should call her over to plead with royal grandfather. The situation was urgent at that time, and we didn't expect Chang'e's chi to suddenly act up. Li Tai's face was full of self-blame. He rubbed his hands and said guiltily. Li Zishuan snorted coldly, Humph. Then do you know that your carelessness almost killed Chang'e? As the elder brother, you caused the death of your sister. I wonder if you'll be able to live in peace for the rest of your lives. Li Tai and Li Ku's faces turned pale when they heard this. Li Chengqian quickly mediated. All right, Shao Xian, since it has already happened, there's no point in saying anything more. Fortunately, Changle now has a blessing in disguise. She has a chance to completely cure her chi. Priest Sun said before that there can be no construction without destruction. No one expected her chi to flare up this time, but the end result is still good. Seeing that Li Chengqian took the initiative to speak up for Li Tai and Li Ku, Li Zixuan was secretly relieved. These brothers were finally acting like brothers, and no longer schemed against each other all the time. Haha. When Dr. Sun said that Changle used Taiji Fist to cultivate true Qi, I was shocked. Xiao Xian, I didn't expect the Taiji Fist you taught to the students of the academy to be so magical. If the common people or the people of Jianghu knew about this, they would definitely go to the academy to learn it. Li Chengqian said with a smile. What? Changle used Taiji Fist to cultivate Qi? Li Zixuan's eyeballs almost fell to the ground. When he taught Changle Taiji Fist to the students, he only wanted them to strengthen their bodies. He didn't expect that someone could cultivate Qi. After all, for ordinary people, the profound meaning of Taiji Fist was too profound. If they did not understand the fist intent and only understood the fist form, it was impossible for them to reach a higher level. Therefore, Li Zixuan was surprised that Changle could use Taiji Fist to cultivate true Qi. Just think about it, a delicate and weak little girl suddenly became a martial artist with true Qi. No matter how one listened to it, it felt unreal. Perhaps this was the only way to describe Changle's talent in martial arts. Yes. I'm ashamed to say that I came into contact with Taiji Fist earlier than Changle, but I neglected to practice it. My progress is not even 1,000th of Changle's. Li Chengqian nodded with a face full of regret. With Changle as a living example, the Li family no longer dared to underestimate Taiji Fist. They believed that after today, there would be a craze for Taiji Fist in the palace. Li Tai scratched his head and said embarrassedly, Ahem, I'm going to start practicing Tai Chi next semester. Maybe in a few years, I can become a martial arts expert like Yamacho, hee hee. Li Zixuan rolled his eyes and couldn't be bothered with this little fatty. Was it so easy to become a martial arts expert? Let's not talk about it now. We'll talk another day. Li Zixuan waved his hand and prepared to go home. He had stayed in the palace for so long that his family must be worried sick. Yamacho, Qingke and I are going back to Yunshan too. Why don't we take a carriage back to Yunshan together? Li Ku's eyes flashed with worry as he hurriedly said. He was mainly worried that Li Zixuan would get into trouble while riding a horse in his current condition. That was why he suggested it in a roundabout way. Yes, all right then. Li Zixuan thought about it and accepted Li Ku's kindness. Riding a horse in such cold weather was indeed not a pleasant thing, especially in the north. The wind was like knives on the face. No matter how good one's martial arts were, it would not feel good. Husband, you're finally back. As evening approached, he finally returned to the residence. Han Yushi was waiting at the door. Seeing Li Zixuan return, she hurriedly got up and greeted him. Xian, did the retired emperor make things difficult for you? Madame Li asked Li Zixuan as she stood up. Mother, it's nothing. It's mainly because something happened in the palace, so I was delayed for a while. Li Zixuan replied with a relaxed expression. Madame Li smiled as if relieved of a burden. Half an hour ago, Daoist Sun returned from Chang'an. Mother heard from Daoist Sun that Princess Changle had a relapse. You were in the palace helping to treat her. How is Her Highness now? She's fine. According to Divine Dr. Sun, it's very likely that she'll recover in the future. Li Zixuan avoided the topic. Naturally, he could not tell his family that he had fainted because he had transferred Qi to Changle in the palace. That's great. Her Highness is cute and kind. To be safe and healthy is truly a blessing to my great Tang. Madame Li sighed with joy. She had seen Changle when she came to the Li household. Moreover, she liked this little girl from the bottom of her heart. Now that she heard that the little girl's illness that had troubled her for several years could be cured, she naturally felt happy. Father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, please continue chatting. I'm a bit tired. I'll go in and rest for a while. Li Zishuan's body couldn't help but sway. He hurriedly regained his footing and said a few words to the elders in the room before heading to his bedroom. This time, his body had truly been hollowed out. At the very least, he would need to recuperate for several days before he could fully recover. Mother. Then I'll go see husband. Han Yushi looked worriedly at Li Zishuan's back. She turned her head and said a few words before following after him. 2 days later, the civil and military officials who had taken 7 days of New Year's Eve finally returned to work in the imperial court. The first day of work after the New Year's Eve was unusually busy. Every department in the 3 provinces and 6 ministries had to report the backlog of problems to Li Er one by one. The morning court session lasted until noon, and it still hadn't ended. At this time, many officials' stomachs were already growling from hunger. Unexpectedly, Li Er released a shocking piece of news at this time. 2 days ago, Changle's illness suddenly flared up. The Duke of Yong unstabilized Changle's condition with his own efforts and used an ingenious prescription. There is hope that Changle's illness can be completely cured. All these years, Changle's illness has always been a sore point for me. Now that the Duke of Yong has completely cured it, I am very happy. Therefore, I have decided to bestow the entire Lantian County to the Duke of Yong as his fief. What do you think? Boom! Bestow the entire Lantian County to Li Zishuan? The moment he said that, the officials were in an uproar. Your Majesty, I don't think so. Although the Duke of Yong has made great contributions, it's too much to bestow the entire Lantian County to him. Please retract your order, Your Majesty. Wei Jing frowned. He felt that Li Er was completely acting on impulse. Thus, he took a step forward and spoke righteously. Chapter 1174. HM? Why is the reward too excessive? Changle is the apple of our eye. We have said before that if anyone can cure Changle's illness, we will give them half of the country. Right now, it is only a small Lantian county. Wei Zwiching, are you looking down on us or Changle by saying that the reward is too excessive? Within the Taiji Palace, Li Er saw that Wei Zheng was the first to jump out to oppose and frowned. He paused and snorted with displeasure. But how could Wei Jing retreat because of Li Er's displeasure? This fellow was the most typical thorn in the imperial court during the Zhenguan era. Opposing Li Er had already become a common occurrence for him. Your Majesty, this old subject is not looking down on anyone, but if all the citizens of Lantian County are enfeoffed to Marquis Yong, and how is that different from Western Zhou's enfeoffment system? Could it be that Your Majesty wants to restore the Zhou system? Enfeoffment system. Hearing this sensitive word, the faces of all the officials in the palace turned serious. In the history of ancient China, ever since the Qin dynasty unified the 6 states, the biggest problem that the founding emperors of each dynasty faced was which system to adopt to manage the country and ensure that the country would always remain in the hands of their own people. Regarding this, the Qin first emperor thought of a way to abolish the enfeoffment system and change it to a county system. As for the county magistrates, they were personally appointed by the emperor to govern the region. However, the Qin dynasty only existed for 15 years before disappearing. Later on, many founding emperors used the Qin dynasty's disappearance as a lesson and implemented the enfeoffment system. During the implementation of the enfeoffment system, because the emperor's relatives were watching over the country, they had a very close relationship. Thus, the citizens lived very well and there were very few disturbances. However, this could only be done when the founding emperor was on the throne. Once the founding emperor died, there would be another catastrophe. Many vassals would start to fight for the throne and start to rebel. For example, the Western Han's rebellion of the state of Qi and the Western Jin's rebellion of the 8 princes. However, during the Tang Dynasty, although there were painful lessons from the Han and Jin dynasties, Li Er still wanted to use the enfeoffment system to reward his son and the officials who helped him obtain the throne. According to historical records, in the 7th month of the first year of Jingguan, Li Er sought out Xiao Yu to discuss the enfeoffment system. Xiao Yu was a person who greatly respected the Zhou rites and could be said to be the most enthusiastic proponent of the enfeoffment system. At that time, he said, based on my observation of the previous dynasty, I believe that the enfeoffment system will last for a long time. The Qin dynasty had 6 states, but the second generation died. The Han dynasty had the world, and the commanderies participated in the construction, but it took more than 400 years. The Wei and Jin dynasties were abolished and could not last forever. Li Er was overjoyed that he had finally found a like-minded person. He was about to issue a decree to reward the officials who had rendered meritorious service. But at the crucial moment, Li Er's idea was vehemently opposed by the officials led by Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Wei Jing, Li Baiyao, and Yan Shirgu. In their view, the enfeoffment system was the root of the country's troubles. Once this loophole was opened, the Tang Empire would inevitably be plunged into a chaotic state of war. Thus, at that time, the imperial court was divided into the anti-enfeoffment system and the enfeoffment system. But after Li Er's consideration, he finally decided not to enfeoffment system. The anti-enfeoffment system faction obtained a temporary victory. Now that the old matter was brought up again, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and the others could not sit still. Bastard! How could Li Er, who was sitting at the head of the table, not know what was at stake? His expression changed as he slammed the table and stood up. He pointed at Wei Zheng and said angrily, Wei Xuanqing, don't confuse the public. I am only giving Lantian County to the Marquis of Yong and as a fief. What does this have to do with the enfeoffment system? Seeing Li Er so angry, the officials in the imperial court immediately dispelled the idea of joining in the fun. Now that Li Er had ascended the throne for a long time, he had accumulated more and more power. Many officials were still afraid of him getting angry. Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui looked at each other. Finally, the two of them looked at Zhangsun Wuji at the same time. But the latter actually closed his eyes and crossed his arms, standing on the spot as if he was asleep. What a joke! Chang'e was Zhangsun Wuji's niece. Now that Li Zixuan had saved Chang'e, no matter what, Zhangsun Wuji, as her uncle, had to accept this favor. On this matter, even if he did not support it, he could not oppose it. Besides, in his heart, he also felt that Wei Zheng was making a big fuss over a minor issue. It was just a county in Lantian County. Although it was a little out of bounds compared to Li Zixuan's title, forcefully connecting it to the feudal system was a little too far-fetched. After reading Zhangsun Wuji's attitude, Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui looked at each other and shook their heads. In the end, they did not go out to stand up for Wei Jing. The pitiful Wei Jing suddenly became a lonely warrior, facing Li Er's anger with his own strength. But the reason why a troublemaker was called a troublemaker was because he was not afraid of difficulties and faced them head-on. Wei Jing was never afraid of difficulties. He took a step forward and said aggressively, Your Majesty! As the saying goes, a small clue reveals the whole picture. Although a county cannot be compared to the enfeoffment system of the Western Zhou dynasty, once this example is made, I fear that our Tang Empire will repeat the mistakes of the Han and Jin dynasties. Speaking of which, this fellow was really stubborn and dared to say anything. If it was in the Ming and Qing dynasties, just based on his words, the emperor would chop off his head and even exterminate his entire family. However, even though Jingguan's words were more liberal, when Li Er heard this disgraceful sentence, he could not help but spit fire from his eyes. He pointed at Wei Jing and said in exasperation, Good! 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 Good for you, Wei Xuanqing. Do you really think that the tolerance I gave you is indulgence? How presumptuous! Men, drag Wei Jing out and flog him 100 times. As soon as these words came out, everyone in the hall was shocked. Ever since the Qin and Han dynasties, especially during the Sui and Tang dynasties, the monarchs had always treated their ministers with respect. It was extremely rare for them to use torture on their ministers. It was only after the Ming dynasty that it gradually became more common to use caning on ministers. What I say is for the sake of the country. I am worthy of the heavens and the earth. Today, if your majesty wants to be like King Zhou of Shang, I am willing to do it. Wei Jing's temper also rose at this time. He straightened his neck and looked directly at Li Er, tit for tat. Presumptuous! Men! Drag him out and flog him 200 times. Hurry! When Li Er heard this, he was so angry that he almost flipped the table. He roared out of the hall. Suddenly, 2 silver-armored generals came in and walked in the direction of Wei Jing. At this moment, Fang Xianling could no longer sit still. If these 200 flogs were to be flogged, wouldn't Wei Jing die directly? He quickly stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, please calm down. Your Majesty, please calm down." Wei Zhuqing is straightforward and outspoken. Although his words were a bit extreme, I hope that your Majesty can forgive him on account of his dedication to the country. Chapter 1175. Forgive? How do you want me to forgive? It is because I have forgiven him time and time again that he is so unbridled now. Li Er's angry voice roared in every corner of the Taiji Palace. Only now did people see Li Er's determination to reward Li Zishuan. Your Majesty, Minister Wei's words are indeed inappropriate, but it is not enough to warrant punishment. Your Majesty, please reconsider. Zhang Sun Wuji also stood out. These were 2 separate matters. He indeed did not support Wei Jing's words, but seeing that Li Er was about to punish the minister, he still had to step forward to stop it. This example could not be set. Your Majesty, please reconsider. Since Zhang Sun Wuji had stood out to plead for leniency, the other ministers could not remain indifferent. Instantly, a large group of people bowed. When Li Er saw this, he was so angry that he did not know what to say. At this moment, Wei Jing recklessly said, "This old minister's life and death are not important, but as your Majesty's minister, this minister should think for your Majesty's country. Giving Lantian County to the Marquis of Yong is against the law, and this minister believes that the Marquis of Yong will not agree. The people of Lantian County will also not agree." Li Er was so angry that he laughed. "Good! Since Wei Xuanqing is so confident, then do you dare to make a bet with me?" Wei Jing said without hesitation, "Why wouldn't I dare? But how does your Majesty want to bet?" Li Er said with his hands behind his back, "Humph! Let's bet on my decision. Whether Li Zishuan agrees or not, whether the people of Lantian County agree or not. With 2 days as the limit, I hope that after 2 days, you, Wei Xuanqing, can still be so unyielding." Humph! Court dismissed. Without giving Wei Jing a chance to refuse, Li Er flicked his sleeves and announced the dismissal of the court session. "Hey! Wei Xuanqing, don't you have nothing better to do? Your Majesty wants to give little Xian some land. What does that have to do with you? Jumping out in such a hurry to object? Isn't this just finding trouble for yourself?" The officials had been hungry all morning and wanted to go home to eat. When Li Er announced the end of the court session, the officials went back to their homes. Qing Yaojin walked to Wei Jing's side and patted his arm. As one of Li Zishuan's elders, he naturally stood on Li Zishuan's side in this matter. However, Li Zishuan's temper was too big in the morning assembly, so he didn't want to add fuel to the fire. He could only mock Wei Jing after the assembly ended. "Humph! Lu Guogong, this old man is wholeheartedly devoted to the public. I only care about the matter, not the person. No matter who is involved in this matter today, this old man will come out and stop His Majesty from acting willfully." Wei Jing rolled his eyes and snorted at Qing Yaojin. Hey! What a stubborn old man! Just you wait. Old Ching, don't even need to look to know that you're going to lose this bet with His Majesty. Don't cry when the time comes. Ha ha. Ching Yaojin waved his hand, not willing to waste any more time with a one-track-minded person like Wei Jing. He left Taiji Palace and returned home. Damn it! This Wei Xuanqing has repeatedly contradicted me. It's really hateful. It seems that I have been too lenient with him in the past. After the assembly, Li Er came to the Suite Du Hall. Recalling everything that had happened in the morning assembly, he became angrier and angrier. In the end, he pushed away the memorials on the table and roared angrily. Your Majesty, please calm down. Don't be angry. At this time, Empress Zhongsun happened to walk in from outside the hall. Her complexion seemed to be much better than 2 days ago. Guanyin maid? Come and sit. When Li Er saw that it was Empress Zhongsun, he quickly restrained the anger on his face. After Zhongsun sat beside him, he asked with concern, How is Changle recovering? Empress Zhongsun smiled and said, Your Majesty, Changle has completely recovered after 2 days of recuperation by Dr. Sunday. This morning, this concubine followed Changle and practiced Taiji fist twice. Li Er immediately forgot some of the unpleasantness in the assembly and said with a smile, Good. Guanyin maid, you have to practice Taiji fist every day in the future. If I have time, I will practice with you. I heard from the Marquis of Yong, and that even if ordinary people can't sense qi when practicing Taiji fist, if they practice more, it will only be good for the body. When the locusts flood this summer, the palace's food must have locusts every day. In the long run, Guanyin maid, your qi will definitely slowly improve. Li Chengqian's prediction was right. After the incident with Changle, there was indeed a craze for Taiji fist in the palace. Not only Empress Zhongsun, but some of the concubines, princes, and princesses in the harem also followed to practice Taiji fist. Now, Li Er could be considered to have performed a real-life version of delicious. Last year, when the Academy used locusts to make the delicacy soaring to heaven, Li Er wanted to find trouble with Li Zixuan after learning the truth. Unexpectedly, he was now looking forward to eating locusts in the palace again. Yes, delicious. The changes in the world could be said to be wonderful. Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. This concubine understands. If there was a chance to live longer, she believed that no one would be willing to die early. Why wouldn't Empress Zhongsun want to live a healthy life with Li Er? Therefore, when she practiced Taiji fist, she was more serious than anyone else. At this time, she looked at the scattered memorials on the ground and bent down to pick them up while smiling softly. On the way here, this concubine heard that Wei Xuanqing contradicted Your Majesty in the morning court. I think Your Majesty should be worried about this matter just now? Humph! That stubborn old man. When Wei Zheng was mentioned, Li Er immediately became angry. He briefly recounted what had happened in the morning to Empress Zhongsun. At the end, he couldn't help but add, Guanyin maid, do you think this Wei Zheng is arrogant because he is pampered? He completely took our previous tolerance for him as indulgence. He actually compared me to King Zhou of Shang and compared himself to Shanggan? Humph! If I were King Zhou of Shang, Wei Zheng would have died who knows how many times. In fact, the reason why Li Er was so angry today, other than Wei Zheng's attitude being a bit reckless, was that he had already promised to bestow Lantian County to Li Zixuan yesterday. Moreover, his father Li Yuan was still present at that time. In this way, if he really couldn't fulfill his promise because of Wei Zheng, not only would he lose his prestige, he would also become a joke in Li Yuan's eyes. This was absolutely not allowed to happen. Li Er had a very deep obsession in his heart, and that was to be an emperor for all eternity. No matter how bad it was, he had to be better than Li Yuan. He wanted to prove to his father that no one was more suitable to sit on the throne than him. Ha ha! Your Majesty, please calm down. That last bet of yours has caused Wei Wuching to suffer miserably this time. I don't know if someone will throw stones at Wei Wuching's house in the next 2 days. Empress Zhongsun softly comforted, then thought of something and couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Chapter 1176. It was almost evening in the Yunshan residence. Li Zixuan looked at the golden silk in his hand and helplessly revealed a trace of a bitter smile. He could only hear himself muttering to himself, Wei Jing, this time it's not me who wants to make things difficult for you. It's His Majesty and the people. After that, he picked up the pen and paper on the table and scribbled a few lines of word. Then, he put it in an envelope and left the study. He called Pang Feiji and said, Feiji, quickly send this letter to the workshop and give it to Ma Zhou. It was already the 7th day of the Lunar New Year, and the workshop had already resumed production. Correspondingly, the editorial department of Tang Daily had already started work 2 days ago. Therefore, some of the people in Chang, and who had been away for work all year round, had taken advantage of these 2 days to enjoy the freshly baked Tang Daily, which was still emitting the fragrance of ink. Yes, Marquis. Pang Feiji bowed and accepted the order. Mr. Ma, Marquis asked me to give this to you. In the new workshop, in the editorial department of Tang Daily. After Song Xiaoxi's report, Pang Feiji met Ma Zhou and handed over the letter from Li Zixuan. At this moment, Ma Zhou was writing the application materials for the evaluation of professors. After the Lantern Festival this year, the teachers of the academy would start school early. The first thing in the new semester would be the evaluation of teachers' titles. A few days ago, Li Zixuan had asked Ma Zhou to start preparing. At this time, he took the letter and opened it. He was stunned. If not for the fact that the handwriting on the letter was exactly the same as Li Zixuan's, he would have suspected that Pang Feiji was faking Li Zixuan's handwriting. Okay. Please tell Marquis that there is no problem on my side. After putting away the letter, Ma Zhou's expression was strange. He then said to Pang Feiji in a muffled voice, Okay. Then I'll take my leave. Pang Feiji was confused. However, he knew that some things could be asked and some things could not be asked. Therefore, he just nodded and left. Sigh. I really don't understand what Marquis is trying to do. After Pang Feiji left, Ma Zhou smiled and sighed. The next day, the headline of Tang Daily made Chang'an, which had been bustling for a few days after the Spring Festival, boil again. This subject, Li Zixuan, has heard that Your Majesty wishes to bestow upon this subject the land of Lantian County. This subject is in fear and trepidation. As a marquis, to receive a county as a fief is indeed against the rules. This subject will also be criticized by my colleagues. However, as Your Majesty's subject, I am willing to share Your Majesty's worries and make the following promise. If within 3 years, this subject is unable to ensure that the people of Lantian district can afford to wear clothes, eat meat, and read books, this subject is willing to hand over all my fiefs. I welcome all the people and officials of the Great Tang to supervise this subject. Li Zixuan, 8th day of the 1st month of the 2nd year of Xinguan. This short announcement was similar to a modern-day inauguration speech. However, this was the first time that the ancient people had seen such a form of announcement. They could not help but find it refreshing. However, what was more interesting was the content of the announcement. It seemed that Li Zixuan was going to bestow all of Lantian district to Li Zixuan? This was big news. Did I hear wrongly? His Majesty wants to bestow Lantian district to the Marquis of Yong'an? After reading the newspaper, the people exclaimed, especially those who lived in Lantian district or had relatives living in Lantian district. They were so excited that they almost jumped up. This is great. His Majesty is wise. From now on, I am also a farmer in Marquis' fief. Ha ha. In the future, My child might be able to attend school and even get into Yanhuang College. Haha. This is really good news. I have to go back and tell my child's mother. We have to celebrate at noon. Hey, old Zhong, you guys are really lucky this time. I used to say that you guys were too far away from Marquis territory and couldn't become Marquis fief. Now, you guys have finally gotten what you wanted. Haha. I have to go to your house to drink some wine later. That's not a problem. Old Yang, whenever you go, there will be wine to drink. As Marquis farmer, we can't be stingy. Uncle Zhong, there seems to be something wrong with this headline. Yu Dehang, the scholar that was saved by Li Zixuan as the vanguard of the Chui Down movement, happened to be in the city to buy books today. He heard that Chitsu Culture was doing some discount promotion recently. Buying books would be much cheaper than usual. On the way, he heard people talking about the headline in the newspaper. He simply bought a copy of the newspaper and then read the contents of the newspaper to his fellow villagers. When the villagers heard the contents of the newspaper, they could not help but be happy. However, he could not help but frown. What's wrong? Little Jing? Isn't this a good thing? What's wrong? You family manners Li Jing, who was also the Uncle Zhong that Yu Dehang mentioned, was puzzled. That's right. Elementary scholar you're well-read. Can you help us analyze what's wrong? The people of the same village all looked at Yu Dehang and talked at once. It could be seen that this scholar was very respected in their village. Uncle Zhong, think about it. If the emperor really gave Lantian County to the Marquis of Yong'an, why hasn't the emperor issued an imperial edict for such a huge matter? Furthermore, the Marquis of Yong'an didn't have to put these words in the newspaper. I think there must be a deeper meaning behind this. Elementary scholar Yu frowned and said in a low voice. Uncle Zhong heard this and fell into deep thought. After a while, he nodded and said, Little Jing, what you said makes sense. There's something wrong with this. But no matter what, our village is about to be merged into Marquis fief. This is a joyous matter. Yu Dehang shook her head and said, Uncle Zhong, I'm afraid things aren't that simple. You see, Marquis said in the newspaper that as a Marquis, he received a county as his fief. This is against the rules, and will cause criticism from his colleagues. Therefore, I'm guessing that there are court officials who are objecting to the emperor giving Lantian County to the Marquis of Yong'an as his fief. What? Someone objected? Who dares to object? Isn't this asking for our lives? We finally have the chance to become Marquis villager. If we lose it because of them, then when will the people of our Yu family manor be able to eat meat and wear clothes? Uncle Zhong's eyes widened when he heard this, and his voice involuntarily increased by an octave, attracting the attention of the passers-by. Uncle Zhong is right. Elementary scholar Yu, who exactly is objecting? This is a joyous matter for our village. We can't let anyone ruin it. The villagers were all filled with righteous indignation. Faced with the happiness that was about to fall into their bowl, no one wanted to watch it slip by. Yu Dehang thought for a while and said, Who exactly wants to stop the emperor from giving Lantian County to the Marquis of Yong'an? Let's split up and find out. Chapter 1177. It wasn't just the people of the Yu family manor. There were nearly 100 villages in Lantian County, and there were more or less villagers who came to Chang'an City today. Even those who didn't enter the city could obtain the news from the newspaper through various channels. When they heard that the entire Lantian County would become Li Zixuan's fiefdom, the commoners were undoubtedly elated. However, as the news spread, more and more people discovered the hidden meaning behind this announcement. Go go go! Old 7th Lu, quickly go to Chang'an City. I heard that there are people who don't want Lantian County to become Marquis Yong'an's fiefdom. Let's quickly go to Chang'an City to take a look. What? Didn't Zhao Wazi say that His Majesty had already decreed that Lantian County would become Marquis Yong'an's fiefdom? Why did he change his mind now? Sigh. That's because you didn't read the newspaper carefully. Our village's Sir Wu said that Marquis Yong An's words aren't as simple as they seem. Go go go. Quickly go. Alright. Old Wang, wait. If someone really dares to mess up this matter, I, Old Seventh Lu, will be the first to not let him off. Similar conversations occurred in various villages in Lantian County. The commoners who didn't go to the market were now heading towards Chang'an City. A flood was about to sweep over its left deputy way. Scholar Yu, I heard from a servant in Assistant Minister, whose house that left deputy way was the only one who strongly opposed His Majesty giving Lantian County to Marquis Yong. At 8:45 in the morning, the Yu family manor's dozen or so villagers gathered at the entrance of the East Market. One of the villagers said to Yu Dehang with a face full of resentment. As expected, Yu Dehang muttered to himself. Then, he looked at Zhong Lijing and said, Uncle Zhong, what should we do now? To be honest, if it wasn't for this matter, Left Deputy Wei would have always been my role model. However, if all the other villages in Lantian County were to be merged into Marquis' fiefdom, it would be beneficial to everyone. In terms of national law, Left Deputy Wei's objection is indeed understandable. However, he neglected the feelings of us ordinary villagers. Zhong Lijing's gaze darkened. He looked at the surrounding villagers, who were all agitated and eager to fight, and slowly opened his mouth to speak. Wei Zhucheng is indeed a good official who cares about the people, but he can't just focus on the law and ignore the interests of the people of Lantian County. Let's go to Wei Zhucheng's house and ask him for an explanation. Good. To demand an explanation. Let's go and demand an explanation. As soon as Zhong Lijing finished speaking, he immediately received unanimous approval from the villagers. In the past, their Yu family manor wasn't Li Zishuan's fief, but they still managed to get by. However, humans were creatures. Once they were given hope and then disappointed, most people wouldn't be able to accept it. The villagers of the Yu family manor were now in such a situation. They saw that they had the hope of leading their families to a good life, but it was all ruined by Wei Zheng alone. How could they tolerate this? In addition, after learning that Wei Zheng was the instigator behind this, the people of the other villages all rushed to Wei Zheng's house in Yongxing Lane. There were more and more people, and they gradually formed a mighty torrent. They came from different villages, but at this moment, they all had the same goal, and that was to make Wei Zheng yield and stop interfering with Li Zishuan's reward. Madam, not good. There are many people gathered outside the residence. The old gatekeeper of the Wei estate was the first to discover the abnormality and quickly reported it to the maidservants in the residence. The maidservants then ran to the rear courtyard to inform the mistress of the house, Madame Pei. When Madame Pei heard this, she said in surprise, There are many people gathered outside the residence. Master has always been an honest official, so why would these people come to our house to cause trouble? Could it be that they were instigated by some vile people? Madame Pei was born in a prestigious family, but she was willing to marry into the Wei family, which was in decline. What she valued was Wei Zheng's upright, honest, and outspoken nature. Although her life after marriage was very poor, with such a noble and clean husband, her spiritual life had always been quite fulfilling. Therefore, when she heard that there were people gathered outside the Wei estate today, she felt a burst of doubt. She might not dare to say anything else, but she felt that Wei Zheng's official and moral character were impeccable. Madam, those people didn't cause trouble and didn't say anything else. They only said that they want to see Master and ask him to let them go. The maidservant bowed and replied. This group of people gathered in front of the Wei estate was much more rational and restrained compared to the group of people who gathered around the Chui estate last year. It was mainly because Wei Zheng's official reputation had always been very good, and most of the people felt that he was a good official. Although Wei Zheng might have made a mistake in the matter of Lantian County being awarded to Li Zishuan, the people still remembered that Wei Zheng had treated them well in the past and restrained their behavior. Let them go? Let's go. Lu He, let's go out and take a look. Madame Pei thought about it and still couldn't understand how Wei Zheng had offended this group of people, so she stood up and said, Madam, don't. You mustn't. There are too many people outside the estate. What if some bad people mixed in and hurt you? What should we do? Madam, you should wait for master to return. When the maidservant heard this, she jumped in fright and hurriedly stopped her. At this time, Wei Zheng should still be in the morning court, so she didn't dare to let Madame Pei go out to investigate the situation. After all, the matter of the Chui estate being destroyed by the angry people more than a month ago was still fresh in the minds of many Chang and citizens. It's fine. Since these people didn't cause trouble, they definitely won't harm me. Lu He, quickly move aside. Madame Pei insisted. I won't move aside. I can't let Madame go out and take risks. If Madame wants to go out, you have to step over my body. The maidservant did not back down. Left Minister Wei. Left Minister Wei. I beg you to let us go. At this time, a commotion suddenly came from outside. Madame Pei's expression changed as she said, Master is back. Let's go to the back of the courtyard to take a look. This time, Lu He didn't stop them and followed Madame Pei to the front yard. Let you go? When have I ever done anything to harm you or restrict your freedom? In front of the Wei estate, Wei Zheng had just returned from the morning court and saw many citizens gathered in front of the estate from afar. His heart sank and he hurriedly came to the front of the crowd. When he heard the citizens all asking him to let them go, he couldn't help but feel puzzled and asked, Student Yu Dehang greets Left Minister Wei. Just as Wei Zheng finished speaking, Yu Dehang walked out and cupped her hands towards Wei Zheng. Then she said, This student comes from the Yu family manor, which is the northernmost manor in Lantian County. Last year, under the management of Marquis, the 8 manors in Lantian County's fief of Marquis Yong, and were all well fed and well clothed. Now that we heard that His Majesty wants to bestow the entire Lantian County to the Marquis Yong but Left Minister Wei, you have a different opinion, so we came here to implore Left Minister Wei to change your mind and let His Majesty bestow the entire Lantian County to the Marquis Yong. Chapter 1178. Relying on law is not enough to govern, and relying on virtue is not enough to govern. A country has its laws, and a family has its rules. His Majesty's decision to give Lantian County to the Marquis of Yong is clearly not in accordance with the country's laws. This is a calamity that will bring chaos to the country. As an important official of the empire, how can this old man sit by and do nothing? In front of the Wei residence, Wei Zheng looked at the aggressive commoners in front of him. There was not the slightest trace of fear on his face as he spoke righteously to Yu Dijin. Hearing this, Yu Dehang frowned and said in a low voice, Left Minister Wei's words are incorrect. What does Lantian County have to do with Western Zhou's enfeoffment system? The Marquis of Yong is benevolent, and the commoners of his fief all love and respect him. Now that they hear that the other villages of Lantian County have the opportunity to become the Marquis of Yong's fief, countless commoners are overjoyed and scrambling like ducks. This is what the people want. Left Minister Wei, you keep saying that you are doing this for the sake of the country's laws and dignity, but you have disregarded the people's will and harmed the tens of thousands of commoners of Lantian County. Being spoken to like this by a late student, Wei Zheng's old face was somewhat embarrassed. Brushing his sleeves, he angrily said, Foolish brat! Since the founding of the great Tang, there have been many restrictions on the enfeoffment of the nobles. This old man has never heard of anyone being able to obtain the fief of tens of thousands of households as a marquis. With this example, I'm afraid that in the future, there will be many vassals in the great Tang. The rebellion of Prince Qi of the Western Han and the rebellion of the 8 princes of the Western Jin are not far off. This old man will definitely not agree to this kind of politics that brings chaos to the country. His worries were not without reason. According to history, in the 13th year of Jingguan, Li Er indeed brought up the old system again. However, at that time, he changed the name to feudalism. The so-called feudalism was like the Western Zhou's enfeoffment of vassals, allowing the various princes and meritorious officials to hold a permanent position in a place that could be inherited by their descendants. This matter was clearly a reversal of history. As a result, it was strongly opposed by Fang Xianling, Wei Zheng, Zhang Sun Wuji, Ma Zhou, Li Baiyao, and Yu Jining. Afterwards, under the circumstances where the objections of all the officials were ineffective, it was the already married Princess Changle who personally stepped forward to persuade Li Er to withdraw the order. The enfeoffment system had its advantages, but it also had its drawbacks. During the Anlushan rebellion at the end of the Tang Dynasty, it was precisely due to the excessive power of the regional military commanders that caused the great Tang Dynasty to suffer an unprecedented blow. It was difficult for it to return to its former glory. Therefore, it was hard to say whether the enfeoffment system was good or bad. At this moment, facing his former spiritual idol, Yu Dehang inexplicably felt a little disappointed. He angrily said, "Left Prime Minister Wei, are you going to ignore the suffering of tens of thousands of people in Lantian County just to insist on your political views? In this way, even if you realize your political ambitions, what's the point?" This student remembers that the Marquis of Yong once said that everyone in Yanhuang College should have a heart for the heavens and earth and a life for the people. Your actions today are far inferior to the Marquis of Yong. With an ashen face, Wei Jing said, "Shut up. Since ancient times, only when the country is stable can the people prosper. This old man's political views are to protect the stability of the great Tang dynasty. This brat only sees the immediate benefits but cannot see the future of the world. He is truly a short-sighted person." At this moment, Yu Dehang no longer cared about being polite. He retorted sarcastically, "Left Prime Minister Wei is truly eloquent. This student does not understand how bestowing Lantian County to the Marquis of Yong would affect the stability of the country. What you are worried about is that the Marquis of Yong will gradually grow in power like the Dukes of Western Zhou. However, Lantian County is close to Chang'an. Rather than doubting the loyalty of the Marquis of Yong, why not worry about the lives of the people in the counties surrounding Chang'an? Furthermore, the Marquis of Yong had once said that if the people of Lantian County could not afford to eat meat, wear clothes, and study within 3 years, then he would automatically relinquish all of his lands. From this, it can be seen that the Marquis of Yong only wants to let the people live a good life and not for the sake of fighting for power and profit. As for us villagers, we only want to live a good life under the rule of the Marquis of Yong. Firstly, we do not violate the laws of the country. Secondly, we do not harm our personal morals. Why must left Prime Minister Wei force us? Yes, we only want to follow the Marquis of Yong and live a good life. We only want to live a good life. We beg left Prime Minister Wei to grant us this wish." Yu Dehang's last sentence could be considered to have spoken the hearts of all the villagers. Immediately, the several hundred villagers in front of the Wei residence all began to talk at once. Humph! Wei Zheng's insistence for many years was completely worthless by Yu Dehang's words. He wanted to say something, but when faced with the knife-like gazes of the people, he could only brush his sleeves and turn around to enter the house. Because at this moment, a trace of confusion appeared in his heart. Thinking about how he, Wei Zheng, had been cautious and conscientious all his life, wasn't it all to let the people live a good life? But now, he had become the target of the people's condemnation. Could it be that he had really done something wrong? Old master, are you all right? In the front yard of the Wei residence, Madame Pei came over with a gentle expression and asked Wei Jing with concern. Sigh. I'm fine. Wei Jing shook his head and sighed tiredly. At this moment, he seemed to have aged several years. Madame Pei wanted to say something but hesitated. Seeing this, Wei Jing smiled bitterly and said, Madame also wants to persuade this old man to give up? Madame Pei hesitated and said, Old master, this concubine understands your ambitions, but there are times when people need to know how to be flexible. The Marquis of Yong, on obtaining a bigger fief, will only benefit more people. This is in line with old master's original intention of helping the people. Why do you insist on being stubborn and offending tens of thousands of people just because of something that hasn't happened yet? Wei Jing opened his mouth with difficulty and said, But, madam, the laws of the country cannot be violated, the ratio cannot be changed. Old master, the Marquis of Yong, on taking control of Lantian, is still unknown whether it will be a blessing or a curse for the great Tang. Why don't you wait 2 years and see? Moreover, the Marquis of Yong, and also said that if he doesn't have any political achievements in 3 years, he will voluntarily withdraw from all his fief. In other words, in these 3 years, he is only helping the emperor and the imperial court to manage Lantian County. Old master, what are you worried about? Madame Pei said in a gentle voice. When Wei Jing heard this, he couldn't help but feel enlightened. Because according to this, in these 3 years, Li Zixuan was only helping the imperial court to manage Lantian County. As long as he didn't do a good job, Li Er could take back all his fiefs at any time. This was very different from the hereditary fief system. Madame's words are like pearls. This husband will carefully consider it. Wei Jing was silent for a long time before he came back to his senses. He waved his hand at Madame Pei and then walked into the room. However, his back seemed a little bent at this moment. Chapter 1179. Shaojing, did Wei Zhuqing agree or not? Zhong Lijing and the other villagers couldn't understand the battle of words between scholars. Seeing Wei Jing flick his sleeves and leave, Zhong Lijing was a little puzzled. Yu Dehang shook her head and sighed, Ah, Uncle Zhong, tell everyone to disperse. Let's go back and eat first. Zhong Lijing understood the hidden meaning in Yu Dehang's eyes. His expression darkened, and he turned around to look at the main entrance of the Wei estate. He let out a long sigh and then turned around to shout at the villagers of the Yu residence, Let's go! Listen to Scholar Yu and go back first. Lijing? We're going back just like that? Wei Zhuqing hasn't agreed to us yet. A villager said in surprise. Zhong Lijing said in a bad mood, Just go when I tell you to go. Why are you talking nonsense? Although the Yu residence's villagers were unwilling, they still obediently left because of Zhong Lijing's scolding. However, the other villagers weren't as good-tempered as Yu Dehang. Hey! We originally had the chance to become a villager of the Marquis of Yong-an, but hateful Wei Zhuqing had to ruin it. Bah! That's right. I heard that Wei Zhuqing was a good official, but now it seems that he's a treacherous official. Hey! Some of the more irritable commoners cursed and spat at the Wei estate's gate or picked up stones on the ground and threw them into the Wei estate's courtyard. Bang! Ouch! Which wicked person is throwing stones into the sky? A cry of pain immediately sounded in the Wei estate's courtyard. The commoners outside hurriedly scattered when they heard the sound. After all, since ancient times, commoners didn't fight with officials. However, they couldn't throw stones openly, but no one could control them if they secretly threw them. Therefore, in the afternoon, the servants and maidservants of the Wei estate suffered because no one knew if a sudden disaster would fly over in the next moment. A stone or feces would fall from the sky and land on their head. Hee. Now it's Wei Xuanqing's turn to have a headache, right? Imperial Palace West Court, Lijing Hall. Li Er put down the newspaper in his hand and smiled at Empress Zhongsun. Your Majesty must have seen today's headlines, right? I don't know what the Marquis of Yong and is thinking, to suddenly publish such a notice on the Tang Daily. It looks like he's purposely hinting to the people that someone doesn't want Lantian County to be his fief. Empress Zhongsun had clearly read today's newspaper. When she heard this, she couldn't help but giggle. Li Er smiled but did not speak. Seeing this, Empress Zhongsun's eyes turned and she suddenly said, His Majesty should have given the Marquis of Yong some sort of decree? Otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence in this world? Li Er's expression froze. He opened his mouth, but neither admitted nor denied it. Hey! This kid didn't put in any effort at all, and he wants to obtain 10,000 households land. How can there be such a cheap thing in this world? Empress Zhongsun smiled, and then a worried expression appeared on her face, saying, It's just that the Marquis of Yong is talking too big this time, right? There were 60 to 70,000 people in Lantian County. To let everyone be able to afford to eat meat, wear clothes, and study was extremely difficult. Not to mention 3 years, even if it was 10 years, no one would be able to do it. Li Er frowned, thinking in his heart that all of this was done by this kid on his own initiative. This emperor did not ask him to make such a promise. Although this was what he thought in his heart, but towards Li Zishuan's ability, Li Er still had a lot of trust. Thus he said, Guanyin maid, rather than worrying about this, why don't you guess if Wei Zheng will admit defeat in tomorrow's morning court? Because this matter to other people was an impossible matter, but to Li Zishuan it might not be so. And with that kid's character, if he wasn't confident in something, he would definitely not speak rashly. And Empress Zhongsun carefully thought about it. It seemed like the awesome that Li Zishuan had boasted back then had all come true. In comparison, letting the people of the fief have enough to eat and wear wasn't an impossible matter. This concubine heard that when it was close to noon, Wei Zwicheng's house was surrounded by the citizens of Lantian County. However, with Wei Zwicheng's unyielding character, I'm afraid that even if the citizens opposed, he wouldn't easily give up. So I guess that in tomorrow's morning court, Wei Zwicheng will definitely not admit defeat. Li Er's eyes flashed and thoughtfully said, Hee. Then let's wait and see. The next day, before the morning court, under the steps in front of Taiji Palace, the officials gathered in groups of 3 to 5, whispering to each other as they waited for the morning court to begin. Hey, Wei Xuanqing, I heard that your house was very lively yesterday. How was it? Did you get hurt? Wei Zheng came later today. The officials stood in front of Taiji Palace for half an hour before he arrived. As soon as he arrived, he was mercilessly mocked by Qing Yaojin, this old demon. Wei Zheng angrily glared at Qing Yaojin and replied, This old man is so ruthless. There's no need for High Duke Lu to worry. After saying that, he walked towards the position of Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui. There was no other way. When a scholar met a soldier, there was no way to reason clearly. In terms of shamelessness, he was far from Qing Yaojin's opponent. Morning court. Fortunately, he didn't come very early today. After standing for a while, a eunuch came over and shouted. The officials lined up and entered Taiji Palace one by one. After the monarch and minister greeted each other, Li Er directly looked at Wei Zheng and said, Minister Wei, the 2 days have passed. Tell me, who won this bet? The officials in the hall all cast their eyes on Wei Zheng, guessing in their hearts how Wei Zheng would answer. However, most people felt that with Wei Zheng's temper, he would definitely not admit defeat. Wei Zheng had already thought about it before leaving this morning. At this moment, he stepped forward, cupped his hands towards Li Er, and bowed. Replying to your Majesty, this old official lost this bet. As your Majesty wishes to punish, this old official will not refuse. Everyone, including Li Er, couldn't help but be stunned. The dignified Wei Zheng actually admitted defeat? Was this still the flamethrower Wei who dared to scold Li Er for half a day? Li Er was stunned for a moment. He thought that he would have to waste his breath. He didn't expect Wei Zheng to admit defeat so easily. After a pause, he laughed. Ha ha! Minister Wei is wholeheartedly devoted to the country. What crime is there? Back then, I only said that it was a bet, but I didn't say what the stakes were. Now that Minister Wei has admitted defeat, does anyone have any objections to the matter of Lantian County being awarded to Li Zishuan? This was called the demeanor of a victor. Between the monarch and his minister, timely tolerance was very necessary. Wei Jing naturally cupped his hands and said, "This old official has no objections." The reason why he admitted defeat today was not because the people threw stones and feces at his house, but because he was deeply affected by his wife's words yesterday. Since Wei Zheng did not object, what reason did the other officials have to object? Thus, they all cupped their hands and said, "This official has no objections." Ha ha! Good. In that case, from today onwards, I will bestow Lantian County to the Duke of Yong'an. Chapter 1180. Your Majesty, today is already the 9th day of the Lunar New Year. I plan to leave tomorrow and bring the Chui family to Zhengzhou. In the Taiji Palace, after Li Er announced that Lantian County was officially under Li Zishuan's control, Wei Zheng cupped his hands and continued. Li Er was overjoyed. Ah no, his expression turned solemn. He pulled a taut face and said seriously, I'll have to trouble you with the Chui family's matters. In order to prevent any accidents, I will send a team of Imperial Guards to escort you along the way. When we reach Zhengzhou, I will have all the officials in Hunan listen to your orders. Wei Zheng would escort Chui Junchuo to Zhengzhou and thoroughly investigate the corruption of the officials of Hunan province. This was originally decided before the new year. Now that Wei Zheng had taken the initiative to leave for Zhengzhou before the Lantern Festival, Li Er naturally had no reason to disagree. He even had some faint expectations in his heart, because his ears could finally be quiet for a while. Cough cough. Although he thought so in his heart, Li Er still looked serious on the surface. The image of a harmonious ruler and his subjects was reflected in the minds of all the officials. Your Majesty, Your Majesty! Wei Jing bowed and said. After experiencing this incident, Wei Jing felt that there were still some areas that he needed to improve on in terms of governance. He could use the excuse of going to Zhengzhou to reflect on it. Li Er nodded and announced that the morning assembly would continue. At noon, as the morning assembly ended, Zhao Song rushed out of the palace on a fast horse with an imperial edict in his hand, heading straight for the east city gate of Chang'an. Some of the quick-witted citizens saw the direction Zhao Song was heading in and roughly guessed what was going on. Look! Someone from the palace came out to deliver the imperial edict. It's heading towards the east of the city. Could it be that the bestowment of Lantian County has been decided? Ha! If that's the case, that's great. The people of our manor have been looking forward to merging into the Marquis of Yong'an's fief for the past 2 days. Although it was only a guess, the tens of thousands of people in Lantian County hoped that this guess would come true. In a moment, all eyes were focused on Cloud Mountain. There lived a young man who was like an immortal. His chest was deep and he was talented. In the Cloud Mountain area, he could make clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. Sometimes, a single word from him could bring endless wealth to the people. In the eyes of the merchants, he was the god of wealth. In the eyes of the people, he was the Yamacho of Yanhuang College. He was the Marquis of Yong'an. Young master, head steward Zhao was here. The imperial edict is here. In the imperial court, Li Zishuan and Wei Zheng had a battle of wits and courage. It was very lively. On Yunshan Mountain, Li Zishuan had just finished his lunch and was sitting in the small courtyard, watching the flowers bloom and wilt in front of the courtyard, watching the clouds roll and disperse in the sky, quite leisurely. At this moment, Xiao He hurriedly ran over, shouting as she ran. "Oh! I'm coming! Li Zishuan nodded and stood up. It had been 4 days since the incident in the palace. His body had more or less recovered. Not only did his strength not decline, but it had also improved slightly. However, it was only a slight improvement. If he wanted to break through, he would have to wait a few years under normal circumstances. However, Li Zishuan was not in a hurry. After all, he was still young. Moreover, with his talent and understanding, it was still very possible for him to enter the great Grandmaster realm in his lifetime. Ha! Head Steward Zhao, long time no see. Marquis of Yong'an, long time no see. After a while, Li Zishuan walked out of the house and saw Zhao Song in the front courtyard. The two old acquaintances naturally had to exchange a few pleasantries. After going through the ceremony to receive the imperial edict, they finally got to the main topic. Zhao Song opened the imperial edict and read, "The Emperor of the Tang Empire decrees, all great doctors must calm their nerves and resolve their illnesses. They must have no desires, and must first show great compassion to others. Today there is the Marquis of Yong'an, who has superb medical skills and miraculous hands, who saved my beloved daughter Changle from danger. I am very happy and specially grant him Lantian County. In addition to his previous fief, he will have a total of 13,527 households to live in. I, Li Zishuan, accept the imperial edict and thank you for your kindness." Li Zishuan heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, then stepped forward to receive the imperial edict. Initially, he was not willing to accept such a large fief like Lantian County. However, since Li Erqiang gave it to him, he had no choice but to accept it. After thinking about it, although his fief was bigger and his responsibilities greater, he would have more manpower and resources to use in the future. Only when there were more people working together could more wealth be created in society. Old Man Li, Madame Li, Han Yushi, and the 3 members of the Yi family were all dumbfounded. They had seen the announcement on Datong Daily yesterday, but they had thought that as long as Wei Zheng did not yield, the imperial edict would not be issued. However, it had only been 2 days and the imperial edict had been issued. In other words, from today onwards, the entire Lantian County would belong to the Li family. In the entire Tang Empire, they were the nobles with the most fief under the title of prince. Li Zishuan's fief had already far surpassed those dukes in the imperial court. He, Marquis of Yong'an, congratulations! Zhao Song congratulated him with a smile. Thank you. Li Zishuan immediately asked Xiao He to bring the money and stuffed it into Zhao Song's hands. Although Zhao Song was not greedy for money, he was still very willing to share in the joy of this kind of money. After everything was done, Zhao Song bade farewell and left. Cloud Mountain immediately became a sea of joy. Little Xian, from today onwards, all the land in Lantian County belongs to our family? Yi Yuzhu asked in disbelief. Li Zishuan smiled and said, That's right, Mother. Now you don't have to think about buying land in other villages, right? Yi Yuzhu had always had a little hobby, and that was to buy land. Whenever she had spare money, she would buy land. Before Li Zishuan returned to Chang'an last year, Yi Yuzhu had bought the entire Han family manor. Child, are you laughing at your mother? Ha ha! How could I? Mother, you must have misunderstood. Cloud Mountain was full of joy and harmony. The imperial edict has been issued to Cloud Mountain. From today onwards, Lantian County belongs to the Marquis of Yong'an. Ha ha! That's great. This time, our manor has really become the Marquis's fief. Ha! At the foot of the mountain, as time passed, more and more people knew that Lantian County was going to belong to Li Zishuan. The commoners ran around to spread the news. In broad daylight, every household set off firecrackers. Standing on Cloud Mountain, Li Zishuan could hear the firecrackers coming from all around Cloud Mountain. The commoners were treating today as New Year's Eve. It was even livelier than New Year's Eve, because from today onwards, The commoners in the other villages in Lantian County could be as well fed as the Han village and Plum village. To the commoners, there was suddenly hope for their lives. Of course, it was even livelier than New Year's Eve. Chapter 1181. The next day. A 10-mile pavilion outside Chang'an City. Since the Qin and Han dynasties, there would be a pavilion every 10 miles outside the main city. Later on, there would be a short pavilion every 5 miles for pedestrians and friends to bid farewell to each other. Today, Wei Zheng led the imperial guards and escorted the Cui family to bid farewell to the officials and generals in the imperial court. Although Troll Wei's mouth was usually hated, most people still admired him for his conduct. His Majesty has arrived. Today's morning court was very short. The purpose was to make time for the officials to bid farewell to Wei Zheng. After the court, Li Er packed up in the palace and rushed over on a horse. "Greetings, Your Majesty." The officials bowed. Li Er said, "You may dispense with the formalities." Then, he went straight to Wei Zheng and said earnestly, "My dear Wei Zheng, this journey is long and dangerous. No matter what, you must take care of yourself. The Tang Empire can't do without you." Li Er's feelings for Wei Zheng were very complicated. When Wei Zheng scolded him, he wanted to kill the old man in front of him countless times. After all, as the emperor, he also needed to save face. But every time after that, he would be glad that Wei Zheng could reprimand him at the crucial moment. This person was like a mirror to him, always able to find his shortcomings. So, in general, he both loved and hated Wei Zheng. Although he had sent Wei Zheng to Hunan province partly for personal reasons, it was mostly for official business. He also didn't want anything to happen to Wei Zheng in Hunan. Without Wei Zheng, he would feel that something was missing in his life. Wei Zheng felt that the feelings in Li Er's words didn't seem to be fake. He raised his head and said expressionlessly, "Your Majesty, don't worry. No matter how difficult the road ahead is, this old official will not fail his mission and eliminate the officials in Hunan. It's getting late. This old official will take his leave. Your Majesty, please take care of your body." Then, Wei Zheng cupped his hands at Li Er and all the officials and turned to leave. "Retired Emperor wants me to enter the palace again?" In the afternoon, Eunuch Chao, who was by Li Yuan's side, came again. Everyone in the Li family felt a strong sense of vigilance rise in their hearts. A few days ago, Li Zishuan was invited by Eunuch Chao to the imperial palace. He only came back when it was almost night time. Moreover, when he came back, his face was exhausted. Clearly, his experience in the imperial palace was not easy. Although Li Zishuan said that there was nothing wrong, Li Jingma and Madame Li could more or less guess what was going on. Therefore, when Eunuch Chao invited Li Zishuan again today, the Li family members were somewhat repulsed. Marquis Yong'an, please don't misunderstand. The retired emperor only wants to invite you into the palace to chat with him. He doesn't have any other intentions. Eunuch Chao immediately understood when he sensed the vigilant aura coming from the Li family. He hurriedly said with a kind smile, "Yes. Then, please wait for a moment. This marquis will pack up and follow you into the palace." Li Zishuan nodded and turned to walk into the inner room. Han Yushi and Madame Li hurriedly followed in without batting an eyelid. Madame Li stepped forward and grabbed Li Zishuan's arm. She asked worriedly, "Xian the retired emperor won't still hold a grudge against you, right?" Li Zishuan smiled slightly and said, "Mother, don't worry. The retired emperor already buried the hatchet with me last time. This time, he probably really just wants to chat with me. You and father shouldn't think too much." After experiencing the incident with Chang'e last time, Li Zishuan believed that Li Yuan would not harm him again. Although this old man was sometimes a bit overbearing, he could still distinguish between good and bad. If that's really the case, then mother can rest assured. Madame Li heard this and let out a long sigh of relief. Then, husband, this concubine will help you change your clothes. Han Yushi happily stepped forward and said, "Okay." Putting on his court attire, Li Zishuan rode with Chao Cixi to Chang'an City. Actually, if Li Yuan had no ill intentions towards him, he would rather like this old man summoning him into the palace from time to time. Because this way, he could ignore the confinement order and legitimately descend Cloud Mountain. Marquis Yong'an, you're here? No need to be so courteous. Sit. Passing through Taiji Palace and arriving at Li Yuan's courtyard, unlike the cold words last time, Li Zishuan received Li Yuan's warm reception this time. And Li Yuanchang, that little thing, was actually also there. The father and son sat around a table. There was even a wooden card on the table. Li Zishuan cupped his hands and bowed, then sat across from them. We heard about this kind of bandit fighting game from Qingke. Since we have nothing to do today, we wanted to find Marquis Yong, and to play a few rounds. Li Yuan saw Li Zishuan put his gaze on the wooden card on the table, and said with a smile. Li Zishuan glanced at Li Yuanchang beside him without leaving a trace, then said to Li Yuan, "Since retired emperor has such a refined interest, then this subject is naturally willing to accompany you." Li Yuan laughed heartily and said, "Haha. I heard that this bandit fighting game must have a prize to be interesting. Marquis Yong'an's family is rich, so you definitely aren't someone who lacks money. Why don't we play a few rounds with 100 rounds as the base?" Li Zishuan couldn't help but be amused. He thought to himself that it was rare for him to go out, and he actually met someone who wanted to take the initiative to give him money. If he didn't agree to this kind of thing, then there was really something wrong with his brain. This subject has no objection. As long as retired emperor has fun. It should be as long as he loses happily, Li Zishuan silently added in his heart. Although he didn't know how Li Yuan's card skills were, he, as the founder of Landlord, Bandit Fighting, was confident that his grasp of the rules and skills would definitely win against the two people on the field. Besides, with his powerful mental strength, his brain was simply a natural card holder. Facing him, this human cheat, what could Li Yuan and Li Yuanchang use to fight with him? Imperial Grandfather, Chang'e has come to pay respects to you. Brother Shaoxian is also here? At this moment, Chang'e walked in from the outside, wrapped up tightly. When she saw Li Zishuan sitting in the courtyard, a trace of surprise appeared on her face at just the right moment. What kind of person was Li Yuan? How could he not see through the little scheme in her heart? However, his face still revealed a trace of benevolence. Chang'e has come? Come in quickly. It's cold outside, don't catch a cold. It just so happens that your imperial grandfather wants to play 2 rounds of bandit fighting with the Marquis Yong, and you can learn from the side. After you learn, come and play with imperial grandfather often. Then Chang'e will learn well from imperial grandfather. Chang'e responded crisply, then turned her head to glance at Li Zishuan. A complicated emotion flashed through her eyes and disappeared. Brother Shaoxian, thank you for saving me that day. Otherwise, Chang'e. Chapter 1182. Call Bandit. Don't call. Don't call. Super Double. Taiji Palace. In the palace where Li Yuan was, 3 people were sitting around a table and happily playing Bandit. Chang'e was at the side holding her chin and blinking her eyes at the changing game on the table. Of course, her little eyes would also glance at Li Zishuan from time to time. It was worth mentioning that there was already a pile of small notes with a red seal in front of Li Zishuan. This thing was something like a banknote that he made on the spot. One note was 100 strings of coins, and it was stamped with Li Yuan's private seal. Each person was given a banknote of 5,000 strings of coins, and they would settle the bill together after the game. After all, silver was not in circulation in this era. Their game was relatively big, and the base bet was 100 strings of coins. Sometimes they would even raise it if they caught a bomb or something. Just 100 strings of coins could fill a cart. According to their way of playing, even if the room was full of coins, it would not be enough for them to play for half a day. Li Yuanchang, this unlucky child, was in pain and joy at the moment. He was happy because the fun of bandit fighting was far beyond his understanding, and he was completely addicted to it. Of course, he was in pain because he had lost at least 3,000 to 4,000 strings of coins. This was all his private money, and he was not like Li Tai and Li Chengqian, who had shares in Strange Interest Pavilion or Strange Interest Culture. He could enjoy dividends of tens of thousands of strings of coins every year. It was not easy for him to get money usually, and these 3,000 to 4,000 strings of coins had already hurt him a little. But if he shrank back and stopped playing at this time, he would feel weak and would be looked down upon by Li Zixuan. Therefore, he was really in pain and joy as he gritted his teeth and persevered. Besides, he still had a trace of luck in his heart, and that was to recoup his losses and even win some money from Li Zixuan. Hey! 3 with a pair, I only have 1 card left. Li Zixuan casually threw out 5 cards, then crossed his legs and looked at Li Yuanchang with a smile that was not a smile. Although he did not care about money, anything that could make the enemy suffer was worth him being happy. This kid deliberately tricked him before, no matter what, he had to make him bleed a lot today. Li Yuanchang opened his mouth, and a sense of helplessness suddenly overwhelmed him. This was all part of Li Zixuan's plan. Now, the remaining cards on the field couldn't control the 3 circles of a pair of 10. I can't afford it. Li Yuanchang sighed helplessly and shook his head. Li Yuan also shook his head. Without any suspense, Li Zixuan won another round and earned 200 strings of cash. Speaking of which, there were probably not many people in the entire Tang Dynasty who could earn money faster than him. One round only took 1 or 2 minutes, and if he was lucky, he could earn 100 or 200 strings of cash. His wealth was simply amazing. Haha! This bandit fight was really interesting. Marquis Yong, your card skills have also made us look at you in a new light. At the end of the round, Changle acted as the beautiful dealer, and helped to shuffle the cards. Li Yuan laughed heartily at this time. Li Zixuan smiled slightly and said, Your Majesty, you flatter me. I just played more and am more familiar with it. In fact, after playing for so long, Li Yuan did not lose much money. Li Zixuan mainly focused his firepower on Li Yuanchang, so relatively speaking, Li Yuan could understand the fun in the card game more. Alright. It's getting late. Today's card game will end here. Changle, go back and rest. Li Yuan raised his head and looked at the sky, then said with a smile. Changle nodded. She had watched the card game from the side for the whole afternoon, and also saw that Li Yuan had no malice towards Li Zixuan, so she had nothing to worry about at the moment. She got up and said goodbye. Then, Imperial Grandfather, Brother Shaoxian, Changle will go back first. And, Changle, take care. Li Zixuan nodded and watched Changle leave. Cixi, come over and calculate how much money should be given to whom for me? If you agree to bet, you must accept defeat. This cannot be sloppy. Li Yuan raised his eyes and looked at Eunuch Chao standing beside him and instructed. Li Zixuan shook his head. Actually, there was no need for Chao Cixi to calculate. He already knew the result in his heart. After all, he was a master of mathematics in everyone's eyes. How could he not have this bit of ability? However, although he knew in his heart, he did not say anything to stop it. Chao Cixi responded, then called over 2 little eunuchs to help count together. After a moment, Chao Cixi cupped his hands and said carefully, Your Majesty, the result is out. His Highness King Lu lost a total of 4,400 strings of cash. You lost a total of 1,200 strings of cash. Only Marquis Yong won. A total of 5,600 strings of cash. Li Yuan did not get angry after hearing this. He pointed at Li Zixuan as if reproaching, but more like half joking and said, Good! Marquis Yong I did not expect that I called you here today to give you money in the end. How do you plan on thanking me? 5,000 strings of cash was definitely not a small amount. With the price of goods in the beginning of the Tang Dynasty, if placed in a relatively poor small county, 5,600 strings of cash was basically a county's tax income for a year. Li Zishuan's heart moved and he replied, "This subject thanks your majesty for the reward. May your majesty's dragon body be in good health." "Ha! Good." Li Yuan laughed loudly, then said to Li Yuanchang, "Yuanchang, tomorrow send the money you lost along with my money to Yunshan. If you agree to bet, you must accept defeat. As a person, you cannot go back on your words. Do you understand?" For some reason, Li Yuanchang seemed to be very honest today. In the entire process of the mahjong game, he did not deliberately create trouble for Li Zishuan like before, nor did he fan the flames at the side. At this moment, he nodded obediently and said, "Father Emperor, don't worry. This subject's son will take care of these matters tomorrow." Li Yuan said again, "And then you go back first. We still have some things to discuss with Marquis Yong and this subject's son will take his leave." Li Yuanchang cupped his fists and left. However, Li Zishuan's eyes flashed, secretly thinking that today's main topic had finally arrived. The afternoon mahjong game was just an appetizer. "Marquis Yong, and yesterday you saved Chang'e. We are very grateful in our hearts. We still have a request today. I wonder if you can agree to it?" As expected, once Li Yuan opened his mouth, nothing good would come out of it. Li Zishuan cupped his fists and said, "Your Majesty's words are too serious. This subject's ability is limited. Within the limits of my ability, if your Majesty has any request, this subject will definitely do my best to fulfill it." When Li Yuan heard that, he sighed helplessly and said, "You really are a slippery fellow. Forget it. We won't beat around the bush with you either. You are very young, and your future is also limitless. We just want to ask you for a favor. I hope that after our 100 years, you can take care of Yuanchang a little. It can also be considered as lessening some of Erlang's sins." Li Zishuan's heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, "I reckon that in the entire imperial palace, only Li Yuan dares to say such words, right?" He frowned and pondered for a long time. Then, he said word by word, "Your Majesty, this subject cannot make things difficult for Prince of Lu. However, there is a saying, when the heavens commit a sin, it can be forgiven. When one commits a sin, one cannot live. His Highness Prince of Lu's future life and death is not in this subject's hands, nor is it in your Majesty's hands. It is only in his own hands." Chapter 1183. Thinking about it carefully, Li Yuan had a good plan. Today, he first called Li Zishuan over to play cards, but there was another person at the table, Li Yuanchang. His goal was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. He wanted to use the card game to let Li Zishuan and Li Zishuan ease the relationship between each other, lose some money at the same time, and give some favors without leaving any trace. Finally, he would raise this request to Li Zishuan. The whole thing was one loop after another. Li Yuan's wishful thinking could be said to be well planned. Making this plan was nothing more than after hearing Li Zishuan's words yesterday, he realized the possible ending that Li Yuanchang might face in the future. As the saying goes, no one knows a son better than his father. Now in the entire Tang Empire, besides Empress Zhongsun, he was the only one who understood Li Er. He knew very well that with Li Er's style of doing things, when he rode the crane deity in the future, if Li Yuanchang still had the same temperament today, then it would definitely be an ending of brothers killing each other. That was why he said that his arrangement was to lessen Li Er's sins. But Li Zishuan would not fall for this old fellow's trick. Under Emperor Li Er's wise leadership, the Tang Empire would only become stronger and stronger. He had no need to help Li Yuanchang, this pile of mud. At that time, not only would it be a thankless task, he might even get himself into trouble. Not to mention that there was originally some unhappiness between him and Li Yuanchang. Li Yuan wanted to use this small favor from this afternoon to resolve the enmity between him and Li Yuanchang. That was undoubtedly a fool's dream. Li Yuan's gaze was like lightning, staring at Li Zishuan for a very long time, then he muttered with a sigh, "The newborn calf is not afraid of the tiger. Young people are indeed full of vigor. Actually, I don't have any other requests, I just want to entrust Marquis Yong, and to save Yuanchang's life at the crucial moment. You don't need to care about anything else, it all depends on his luck." If it was in the past, if someone dared to reject him, the other party would definitely not have a good ending. But today, his power had fallen, and he was past his prime. His heart no longer had the heroic spirit and domineering spirit of the past. Deep in his heart, he only wished for the safety of his children. The Black Tortoise Gate incident 2 years ago had not only dyed the imperial palace red with blood, it had also extinguished his lofty ambitions, causing his heart to turn to ash. Because in this world, there was probably nothing more tragic than seeing one's own flesh and blood being torn apart. It was precisely because he had experienced it that he felt fear in his heart. Li Zishuan's words a few days ago had awakened him from his drunken stupor after losing the throne. There were some things that could not be solved by running away. Li Zishuan shook his head and said, "Please forgive me, retired emperor. There are some things that I can help with, but there are some things that I really can't help with." King Lu's life was in his own hands. If he really did something outrageous in the future, no one in the world would be able to save him. "It's already late, I have to leave the city as soon as possible. I'll take my leave." After he finished speaking, he bowed, and then slowly retreated towards the outside of the hall. Li Yuan stared at Li Zishuan's back and didn't make a sound to stop him. His expression changed indeterminately, and after a long time, he lightly sighed with emotion. Brothers fighting and killing each other. Could it be that this is the destiny that I, Li Yuan's son, can never walk out of? "Your Majesty, that's all." In the Sweet Dew Hall, Zhao Song recounted everything that Li Zishuan had experienced at Li Yuan's place in detail to Li Er. Obviously, Li Er had also planted spies at Li Yuan's place. "Hey! This kid actually came to the imperial palace to earn money today, and he even earned more than 5,000 strings of coins. He's really something." After listening to Zhao Song's narration, Li Er scolded with a pained expression. Li Yuan's life in his later years was extremely luxurious. That was all money that he, Li Er, had dug out from under his fingernails. Last year, when the Tang Empire's treasury was at its most difficult, Li Er did not reduce Li Yuan's expenses. Because even though he had seized the throne, Li Yuan was still his father after all. When it came to filial piety, Li Er never dared to be sloppy. Therefore, the money that Li Zishuan had won today could be said to be Li Er's money. Because most of Li Yuanchang's money was obtained from Li Yuan, therefore, in general, it was Li Er's loss. What else did Imperial Father say to Li Zishuan? Shaking his head, Li Er asked again. He valued Li Zishuan very much. Even though he was filial to Li Yuan, he still had a trace of vigilance in his heart. Now that Li Zishuan was getting closer to Li Yuan, it was inevitable that he would be wary. Zhao Song cupped his hands and answered, "Your Majesty, just now before the Marquis of Yong left, I spent half an hour alone with him. However, as for what they talked about, this old servant has no way of knowing." Li Er closed his eyes and pondered for a moment, then waved his hand and said, "All right. We already know, you can leave first." Zhao Song cupped his hands and left. The hall fell into silence. Spent half an hour alone with him? Imperial Father, what did you tell Li Zishuan about? Li Er sat on the dragon bed, his eyes flickering as he muttered softly. On the afternoon of the second day, Li Yuanchang indeed personally brought people to deliver dozens of carriages of copper coins to Li Zishuan. The mighty fleet of carriages looked very spectacular. Han Yushi and Madame Li found out last night that Li Zishuan had accompanied Li Yuan to fight the bandits in the imperial palace and won more than 5,000 strings of coins. Therefore, today, the servants and accountants here were already waiting in formation, waiting for Li Yuanchang to deliver the money. Marquis of Yong'an, this is 5,600 strings of coins. Have someone count it. Li Yuanchang cupped his hands and said. His attitude had long since lost the rebellious attitude he had on New Year's Eve at the foot of the Cloud Mountain. Ha ha! Then I'll have to trouble your highness. Li Zishuan returned the greeting with a smile, then said, Your Highness King Lu keeps your word, delivering the money so quickly. This marquis deeply admires you. Come, quickly brew a cup of hot tea for His Highness to warm his body. Li Yuanchang's heart was both pained and angry, but he still concealed these negative emotions very well, not revealing the slightest abnormality on his face. There's no need. I was originally willing to bet, so there's nothing to say. On the other hand, I had no intention of offending you on New Year's Eve. I truly shouldn't have. Today I came to apologize. I hope that the Marquis of Yong'an can let bygones be bygones. Seeing Li Yuanchang's refined and courteous appearance, Li Zishuan couldn't help but feel suspicious. If a person's temperament changed greatly in just a few days, then there were only two possibilities. Either his life suddenly changed and he had an epiphany, or he was forced by some external pressure to deliberately disguise himself. Based on his judgment, Li Yuanchang definitely belonged to the second situation. False feelings, this kid should have been taught a lesson by Li Yuan in private. Otherwise, why would he come to apologize today? Your Highness King Lu is thinking too much. I already don't remember what happened that night. Li Zishuan couldn't be bothered to show off his acting skills with this little brat. He still had a lot of things to do. Right now, he just wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. As long as Li Yuanchang didn't take the initiative to provoke him in the future, he definitely wouldn't take the initiative to find trouble with Li Yuanchang. Chapter 1184. Sanbao, I will give you 2 bodyguards. Find a few reliable people in the residence and prepare well today. Tomorrow, you will leave for Bashu and help me find the vanadium mine. The reason why Li Zishuan didn't want to waste time with a brat like Li Yuanchang was because he had more important things to do. This more important thing was to continue building his industrial blueprint. Looking back at his actions in the first year of Jingguan, other than the big event of Yanhuang College, he had only done some experimental experiments, such as voltaic batteries, telegraph machines, electric lamps, generators, and so on. Among them, some things had already been created, while some were still in the theoretical stage due to various practical reasons. But in general, these things had yet to be mass-produced. Therefore, Li Zishuan had set a few small goals for himself this year. First, the 3 acids and 2 bases, needed for the foundation of the chemical industry must be mass-produced. Second, the hydropower station on the Ba River must be started. It could be completed, but it must be started this year. Third, the generator must be built successfully. Although the first-generation generator might be ugly, cumbersome, expensive, inefficient, and unstable, these weren't problems. The first-generation generator was just a transition. Once the first-generation generator was installed on a stone culvert or a small dam, it would be able to generate electricity. With electricity, it could be refined into copper, and this was the time to prepare for the second-generation generator. Once there was a stable and efficient second-generation generator, he could continue to develop technology. Fourth, he would start to focus on developing the metallurgy industry. In this year, he would send people out to search for all kinds of metal deposit. Then, he would use the copper, iron, coal, and so on in his hands to produce crude copper, crude iron, and other metals. Then, he would use electricity to refine all kinds of metals, and finally produce all kinds of alloy steel. Fifth, with the alloy steel and electricity, he could consider manufacturing the mother machine, the machine tool. At that time, Tang Dynasty's industrial foundation would undergo a qualitative leap. Then, all kinds of advanced technological products would become possible. Well, from the looks of it, the second year of Zhenguan was definitely a full year for Li Zixuan. His schedule couldn't be more full. "Young master, what does the vanadium mine look like?" Sanbao frowned and asked. Before the new year, Sanbao, Afu, and the rest had stayed in the workshop for a period of time because they were making fireworks. It could be said that they had gained experience at the basic level. Most importantly, Fubin could not leave the Shangxi mine. Otherwise, that lad would definitely be more experienced in finding ores. Li Zixuan took out a small booklet and handed it to Sanbao. "I have recorded the appearance and characteristics of the vanadium ore here. Prepare well today. It would be best if you can set off tomorrow." Sanbao took the booklet and flipped it open. There were colorful illustrations with textures and lines, as well as some descriptive words. It was really quite detailed. He closed the booklet, scratched his head, and smiled. "Young master, it's a good thing that I've been learning to read since last year. Otherwise, Sanbao wouldn't be able to understand a single word on this." Li Zixuan laughed and said, "Haha. Young master, I told you to study more when you had nothing better to do. It was still useful, right?" Sanbao nodded and said, Yes, it was useful. This time, Sanbao will bring a dictionary to Sichuan. If I come across words that I don't know, I can look it up myself." Now, because of the widespread distribution of the Tang Dynasty dictionary, more and more people in the Tang Dynasty could read. According to Kong Ingdao, Fang Xianling, and the rest, the number of people participating in the Tang Dynasty's imperial examination would increase by a lot in 3 to 5 years. "Haha, you're worth teaching." Li Zixuan laughed heartily and said, "Sanbao, this mine search is also a kind of experience for you. In the land of Sichuan, all kinds of forces are tangled and complicated. You all need to be careful on this trip and try not to provoke the local forces. Once you have ascertained the location of the vanadium mine, come back immediately. At that time, this young master will naturally ask His Majesty for an imperial edict and then open the mine legitimately." The ancient Sichuan referred to the modern Sichuan Basin and some of its neighboring areas. It was not only a geographical concept, but also a cultural one. The land of Sichuan was surrounded by mountains. To the north was the Qinling Mountains, to the northwest was the Qinghai-Tibet Plateau, to the south was the Yungue Plateau, and to the east was the Yangtze River. It was very inconvenient to travel outside. In the north, only the Boxi and Ziwu roads were connected to Guangzhou and Guangdong. In the south, there were many valleys, and in the east, there were mountains. The east sewer was also very dangerous, and only the western plains were slightly more convenient. Hence, the land of Sichuan became a relatively isolated geographical unit far away from the mainland. Although the Bashu region had been incorporated into the political system of the Central Dynasty a long time ago, due to the geographical isolation and the distance from the political center, as well as the large number of Di, Chang, Man, and Liao clans living in Bashu and around the basin, the land of Bashu had actually become the edge of the dynasty. In this place, sometimes, the words of a clan leader might be more useful than those of Li'er. Since the Han Dynasty, the Sichuan region had many separatist regimes and large-scale rebellions. Hence, it formed the impression that the people of Sichuan were chaotic, especially the local powers represented by the Sichuan tribes, which were said to be strong. At the end of the Sui Dynasty and the beginning of the Tang Dynasty, the world was in turmoil. However, the land of Sichuan was relatively peaceful. However, that was only relative to the outside. Inside, there were many powers. Especially between the various tribes, the relationship between the powers was really complicated. In the future, if a vanadium mine was found in Sichuan, how to mine it peacefully would be a tough problem. San Bao obviously understood the importance of this matter. At this moment, his face was not as happy as before. He nodded and cupped his hands. "Young master, don't worry. I will be careful." Li Zishuan patted San Bao's shoulder and encouraged him. "And? San Bao, do well. If you do well, I will be assured to give you more important missions. As for you, you will also be able to enjoy endless wealth." To his own employee, it was necessary to give him some chicken soup for the soul. As expected, San Bao was instantly pumped up. He held his head high and said, "Young master, San Bao doesn't want wealth. As long as I can help you do your job, San Bao is satisfied." "Haha. Okay. Stop sucking up. Go and prepare." Li Zishuan laughed and said, "Yes, young master." San Bao left. Li Zishuan was deep in thought. The metallurgy industry in Tang Dynasty was not very developed. The metals that had been mined were gold, silver, copper, and iron. This was definitely not enough. It seemed like he had to train a group of talents to search for ores all over the country. Chapter 1185. On the third day after the imperial edict was issued, Lantian County's county magistrate, he personally came to Yunshan Villa to visit Li Zishuan. It wasn't a good time to have conflicts with Li Zishuan, but every year at the beginning of the year, whether it was the imperial court or the local government, they would be very busy, so Mr. He immediately came over when he was free. "Greetings, Marquis." At the beginning of the new year, the government office was very busy. After knowing that the entire Lantian County would be in theft, I didn't come to visit immediately. I hope that Marquis will forgive me. County magistrate, he was a middle-aged scholar who was close to 40 years old. He had a small beard on his chin and his body wasn't as fat as most officials. His moderate and serious image gave people a good impression. Li Zishuan's initial fief was within the borders of Lantian County, and he had met county magistrate He a few times. The imperial edict for the fief had already been issued 2 days ago, and county magistrate He only came to visit him today. Li Zishuan wasn't angry, and instead, he felt a bit of admiration. He didn't like those officials who only knew how to flatter. His subordinates only needed officials who could do things. Haha. County magistrate, he is too polite. Official matters are more important. I'm grounded in Yunshan anyway, so I can't run away even if I want to. County magistrate, he smiled and said, "Haha. Marquis is joking. His Majesty grounded you in Yunshan not to punish you, but to give an explanation to others." Li Zishuan smiled and didn't say anything. He didn't dwell on this issue. He extended his hand and made an inviting gesture and said, "There's a lot of wind in the hospital. County magistrate, he, please come in and talk." "Marquis, please." County magistrate, he was obviously very sensible, so he modestly declined. Li Zishuan smiled and took the lead to walk in. After the two entered the house, Li Zishuan asked someone to brew a cup of hot tea for county magistrate He. After the hot tea was served, county magistrate He took out a gray package from behind him and opened it on the table. He then smiled at Li Zishuan and said, "Marquis, this is the name list of all the citizens of Lantian County, as well as the tax revenue of Lantian County for the past 3 years, including agricultural tax and business tax. If you have the time, you can take a look at it. If there are any problems, you can send someone to summon me at any time." After the entire Lantian County became Li Zishuan's fiefdom, not only were all the people and officials in the county under the jurisdiction of Li Zishuan, all the taxes collected every year in the county would all belong to Li Zishuan. It was not an exaggeration to call Li Zishuan the local tyrant of Lantian County. That was why county magistrate he handed over the household registration of all the people in Lantian County, as well as the annual revenue of the county government to Li Zishuan. This was because from today onwards, Li Zishuan would be the highest-ranking official of Lantian County. Li Zishuan did not look at the name list of the people. He opened the account book at the back and scanned through it. He could not help but frown. Lantian County alone collects about 100,000 dan of agricultural tax and 1,000 strings of business tax every year? County magistrate He's eyebrows twitched. He thought that Li Zishuan felt that the taxes collected were too little, so he hurriedly said, "Marquis, the tax system used by Lantian County for the past 2 years was issued by the Imperial Court. In addition to the poor harvest, the people are already suffering. It is not easy to collect so much agricultural tax. I hope that Marquis will not increase the taxes on account of the people's suffering." Li Zishuan did not know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "When did I say that I want to increase the taxes? I was just lamenting that Lantian County's agricultural tax is so high, but the business tax is so little. 100,000 dan of grain, according to the current market price, was only 5,000 strings of business tax. But the business tax was only 1,000 strings of business tax. Was this not a joke? In the modern era, even if it was a poor county, the business tax would not be collected so miserably." County magistrate he heaved a sigh of relief. He then looked at Li Zishuan with a strange gaze and replied, "Marquis, Lantian County is adjacent to Chang'an. Merchants usually go to the east and west to do business. Although there are various shops in Lantian County, it is not easy to collect so much business tax in a year." Actually, what county magistrate he said was only one of the reasons. The reason why the business tax was lower than the agricultural tax was because of the business tax system of this era. China's ancient business tax started in the Western Zhou Dynasty. It was first collected in the bazaar. It was related to the use of land in the bazaar and measurement equipment. It had nothing to do with the tax on goods. The mountain and lake tax was also collected. But in essence, it was a kind of rent for the use of the country's natural resources. During the spring and autumn period, the various vassal states collected business tax. But in the city tax, other than the occupation of land, registration and other things, the tax was based on a certain percentage of the trade volume. This was actually quite similar to the modern business tax. At the beginning of the spring and autumn period, the more developed countries started to have tariff. In the later spring and autumn period, it became more common. Not only were there tariffs at the borders, there were also many checkpoints on the roads in the interior. The normal tax rate for customs and city tax was 2%. During the Warring States period, the business tax was collected as before. Only the state of Qin exempted foreign merchants from customs to attract them and use this to gain the support of the merchants from various countries. After the state of Qin was unified, customs were abolished throughout the country. The Han Dynasty followed the state of Qin. During the northern and southern dynasties, the northern regime focused on land rent. During the time of Emperor Xiaowen of Northern Wei, business tax was not collected. In the later period of Northern Wei, city tax was collected. The shops were divided into 5 categories. There was also a city tax. Once one entered the city, one had to pay a coin. During the Sui dynasty and the early Tang dynasty, the country was unified. Once again, customs were abolished and only the city tax was collected. The tax rate was 30% and the tax rate was 1%. It was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. Just based on this tax rate, if the people of the modern era who made a living by doing business were to transmigrate to the early Tang dynasty, they would definitely be overjoyed. In this era, the imperial court and local government mainly relied on agricultural tax. The business tax was just a buy one get one free gift. Li Zishuan frowned and said, "County magistrate in the next 2 days, I want you to organize a detailed document on the agricultural and business tax collection method, ratio, and scope of Lantian County. Send someone to deliver it to me. County magistrate, he was a bit confused, but he still nodded and said, "Okay. This official will go back in a while and organize people to draft the document overnight. It will be sent over tomorrow." Li Zishuan secretly praised this county magistrate. Not only was he willing to do practical things and care about the people's livelihood, he was also very capable. If his loyalty was not bad, he could be a good assistant in the future. And, county magistrate, he must have a lot of doubts in your heart. This marquis will tell you clearly. Regarding the agricultural and business tax, this marquis feels that the business tax is too light and the agricultural tax is too heavy. In the next 3 years, the agricultural and business tax ratios of Lantian County must be reversed. This is my promise to the people of Lantian County. It is also my hope for all the officials of Lantian County. Li Zishuan looked at County Magistrate He with a burning gaze. His words did not stop until he was shocked to death. Chapter 1186. Yunshan Courtyard, Li Residence Main Hall. After County Magistrate he heard Li Zishuan's words, he couldn't help but jump in fright. Reversing the ratio of agricultural tax and business tax, this was something that no one had ever dared to think of since ancient times. China was an agrarian society in ancient times. Every dynasty emphasized agriculture and suppressed business. Of course, this suppression did not refer to levying more business tax, but the various restrictions on the status of merchants. The classes of scholars, farmers, workers, and merchants were divided into classes, directly nailing the merchants to the lowest level of society. However, although the Tang dynasty followed the previous dynasties and stipulated that merchants or ancestors who were merchants could not become officials, and also limited the color of their clothing, in real life, merchants could enter the palace and interact with high officials and nobles. There were even some who could pass the examination to become an official. Compared to the previous dynasties, the status of merchants in society was gradually increasing. Although the laws of the Tang dynasty prohibited the nobles and bureaucrats from competing with the people, but they could not resist the temptation of huge wealth. The nobles and bureaucrats all entered the business world and engaged in business operations. It was because of this that the ratio of business tax in the Tang dynasty was so low. This was because the nobles and bureaucrats who had already gained benefits would oppose the rulers competing with the people. Moreover, if the nobles and bureaucrats wanted to avoid paying taxes, it was simply too easy. This directly led to the annual business tax revenue of the imperial court not even being a tenth of the agricultural tax. Over time, the ruler's emphasis on business tax became lower and lower. This problem was not only present in the Tang dynasty, but also in many dynasties before and after the Tang dynasty. Therefore, when county magistrate he heard this, he was so shocked. "Marquis, if you rashly change the ratio of business tax, I'm afraid that all the shops in Lantian County will move away. Moreover, the aristocrats in the city may all oppose it. When that time comes, I'm afraid that the business tax we receive will be even lower." County magistrate he had been an official for so many years. His experience in governance was much richer than Li Zishuan. He almost instantly thought of the consequences of increasing business tax. Li Zishuan smiled and waved his hand, saying, "Let's not talk about this first. In the future, this marquis will naturally have a way to make the merchants in the county voluntarily pay more tax. This marquis will first familiarize himself with the situation in Lantian County before saying anything else. Otherwise, it will really be just an armchair strategist." Hearing this, county magistrate he couldn't help but have a good impression of Li Zishuan. Actually, before he came, he was worried that Li Zishuan would act according to his wishes and arbitrarily implement government orders. If that was the case, he couldn't do anything about it. After all, Lantian County had completely become Li Zishuan's fief. As long as Li Zixuan didn't rebel, no one could control him. Now, it seemed that although Li Zixuan had the intention of reform, he did not force the reform by force. That made him feel a little relieved. Regardless of whether it was in ancient times or modern times, a department was most afraid of a leader who didn't know anything and liked to give orders blindly. Marquis, you're too modest. Over the next few days, this lowly official and the deputy magistrate of the Yamen will organize the situation of the various villages in Lantian County into a book. When the time comes, I will send it to you, Marquis. County magistrate, he cupped his hands and said. Then I'll have to trouble you. Thinking that he had become the king of Lantian County, and could give orders, Li Zixuan couldn't help but feel slightly excited. In his previous life, he had played City Skyline and other similar city simulation games. He felt that being a mayor, planning a city, and giving his citizens a good life was a very satisfying thing. Now, he had directly become the king of a piece of land, controlling the life and death of tens of thousands of people. The excitement in his heart was something that couldn't be compared to in the game. Of course, after the excitement, he felt the heavy responsibility on his shoulders. He wanted to give his fief's citizens a good life. He wanted Lantian County to become the richest county in the entire Tang Dynasty, and even the entire world. County magistrate, he hurriedly waved his hands, indicating that there was no need to stand on ceremony. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and said, Right, Marquis. The location of your residence in the county has already been planned. The county Yamen will be recruiting craftsmen to help you renovate the residence. If you have any needs or requests, just send someone to inform this lowly official. Although Li Zixuan had residences in Chang'an and Yunshan, now that he had been granted the entire Lantian County, he had to buy a residence in the county. Firstly, it was to announce his identity as the owner of Lantian County. Secondly, it was to make it easier for the county Yamen officials to report to Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan thought for a while and said, There's no need for the county Yamen to provide manpower or money. This Marquis will send someone to build it myself in a few days. There's no need for county magistrate he to worry about it. County magistrate, he hurriedly said, How can this be? Since Marquis has been granted the title of Lantian County, renovating a residence for Marquis is the responsibility of the Yamen. How can we let Marquis spend money? Li Zixuan waved his hands and said with a smile, That's enough. This Marquis doesn't lack that bit of money. If county magistrate he really feels apologetic, take the money that was originally given to this Marquis to renovate the residence and give my brothers in the Yamen double their monthly salary. Just treat it as a token of my appreciation. Others would be strict with new officials, but Li Zixuan was giving everyone a piece of candy as soon as he took office. However, his candy wasn't that delicious. In the future, if he discovered that someone in the county Yamen wasn't doing their job well, he wouldn't hesitate to take it back by double. County magistrate, he thought of Li Zixuan's current wealth and couldn't continue to persuade him. He could only cup his hands and say, Then this lowly official will represent everyone in the Yamen in thanking Marquis. County magistrate, he said his goodbyes after he finished explaining the matter and did a preliminary handover of some affairs in Lantian County. He was very satisfied with the outcome of this negotiation. Li Zixuan did not make things difficult for him, and for the time being, he would not interfere with the county Yamen's personnel structure and government decrees. Lantian County would also not be thrown into chaos because of a sudden arrival of a new master. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was the 15th day of the first lunar month. The Lantern Festival, also known as the Lantern Festival, the lesser first lunar month, the Lantern Festival, or the Lantern Festival. The 15th day of the first lunar month was the first full moon of the year. It was also the night when spring returned to the land. People celebrated it and also celebrated the continuation of the new year. Sima Qian created the Taichu calendar and listed the Lantern Festival as a major holiday. Since the Sui, Tang, and Song dynasties, it had flourished. Fiery trees and silver flowers combine, the iron locks of the Star Bridge open. And Chen left with the horse, and Mingyu chased after the man. The roaming horsemen all trotted to the li, and the song ended with the plum blossoms. Gold doesn't stop the night, and jade doesn't rush it. From the Tang people's 15th night of the first lunar month, one could roughly see how the Tang people celebrated the Lantern Festival. Actually, since the 14th night of the first lunar month, Chang'an City had already lifted the curfew. On the 14th, 15th, and 16th, the people in the city could go out to enjoy the lanterns for 3 consecutive nights. It was called Night Release. Therefore, in these rare 3 nights, from the nobles to the peddlers, everyone went out to enjoy the lanterns. As a result, the streets of Chang'an City were filled with people and carriages. It was very lively. As for Li Zixuan, because he was trapped in Yunshan, he naturally couldn't feel the liveliness in Chang'an City last night. However, early in the morning, someone rushed from Chang'an City to Yunshan. Chapter 1187. Chengqian? Why are you here? That's right, Li Chengqian came to Cloud Mountain near noon. Haha. Little Xian, I'm here today to ask for a favor. Li Chengqian said with a chuckle after entering the main hall. Li Zixuan shook his head helplessly and said, Ha! Chengqian, just say what you want. I can't bear such words. Li Chengqian grinned and said, Cough, cough. Little Xian, it's actually nothing much. I'm here to ask if you're planning to set off fireworks at the academy tonight? Li Zixuan was taken aback, then he said with some amusement, Haha. Chengqian, you want to bring a batch of fireworks back to Chang'an, right? He would never believe that Li Chengqian came all the way here just to ask such a boring question. The only possible explanation was that this fellow was here to ask for fireworks. Haha. To be honest, I want to make use of the Lantern Festival to set up a fireworks show in the palace this time to make father, mother, grandfather, and Changle happy. Li Chengqian said with some embarrassment. Seriously speaking, this fireworks show was Li Zixuan's original patent. It felt a little strange for him to ask for it at this time. Li Zixuan did not care about this. He smiled and said, Haha. I was wondering what it was, so it's fireworks. Chengqian, why did you have to come personally for such a small matter? There will indeed be a small fireworks show at the academy tonight, but there are still extra fireworks in the warehouse. I'll get someone to send them to the palace later. Compared to New Year's Eve, Li Zixuan prepared plenty of fireworks this time. The day before yesterday, he even got someone to send an ox cart of fireworks to Old Cheng. Old Cheng had pre-ordered this long ago. Something would happen if he did not give it to him. Even so, he was still quite rich. He did not plan to sell this in the short term. It was good to give it to Li Chengqian. Haha. Then I'll thank you. Li Chengqian said with a smile and cupped his hands. But Chengqian, you have to take care of the fireworks and prohibit all sources of fire from getting close. Otherwise, this thing will cause a lot of damage. No, I'll send a craftsman over to take care of the fireworks for you. The Imperial Palace was an important place. Once an explosion or fire occurred, the impact would be no small matter. Li Zixuan had no choice but to be cautious. Yes, that's for the best. When the time comes, I will also send some people to watch over them carefully. Li Chengqian nodded seriously and replied. Li Zixuan explained some other things to take note of. Seeing that it was already noon, Li Zixuan symbolically asked Li Chengqian to stay for lunch. Unexpectedly, Li Chengqian agreed without hesitation. It turned out that this guy was not only here to ask for fireworks, but also to freeload a meal. After all, the food here was even more delicious than the ones in the palace. At 5 in the afternoon, the sky gradually darkened, but Chang'an City was brightly lit. Since ancient times, the Lantern Festival was the last festival of all kinds of festivals during the Spring Festival. After this festival, everyone would settle down and do what they needed to do. Therefore, the people also attached great importance to this festival. Before the sky turned dark, every household and every neighborhood hung 2 lanterns in front of their doors. The eastern and western cities did not implement a curfew tonight, and all the big shops were operating as usual. Neat rows of lanterns were hung on both sides of the street. There were many types of lanterns, and each had its own characteristic. There were egrets twirling flowers, yellow dragons spitting water, golden mallards, silver swallows, transient light cave, star-gathering pavilion, and so on. It was dazzling. Such a beautiful display of lanterns naturally attracted all the people, from the emperor to the commoners. When the sky turned dark, the city was immediately filled with carriages and horses. No one cared about the people. The families of the kings and lords made merry on horseback, praising and competing with each other. The scholars all composed poems to record the event. After dinner, most of the commoners in Chang'an City brought their families out to shop. Some restaurants and shops took the opportunity to launch some promotional activities to attract a large number of rich people to spend money in their shop. They all wanted to make a lot of money tonight. Ahem, except for the men who would go out, the women also went out tonight. According to records, on the night of the Shangyuan festival, Chang'an City was as bright as day. The mountain shed was more than 100 feet high. After the divine dragon, there were many decorations. Scholars and women all went out at night, and the roads were blocked by carriages and horses. The Lantern Festival was also known as the Valentine's Day in ancient China. The beauties in ancient times were usually very honest. Basically, they lived a monotonous life of not going out of the house, not going out of the house. They were watched too strictly. However, it was different during the Lantern Festival. Not only could they go out of the house, but they could also go out at night. This made the ladies very excited. Therefore, many Tang poems left verses of beauties playing and looking at the lanterns during the Lantern Festival. There are many beauties on the river and bridge, there are many fragrant carriages on the road, the South Mo black silk ride, the East neighbor pink dress, and so on. As a result, the night of the Shangyuan festival was even more lively. Everywhere in Chang'an City could be seen children chasing each other, girls playing, and single men giggling. On Yunshan Mountain, the festive atmosphere was also quite strong. Although the number of lanterns was definitely not as many as those in Chang'an City, the variety was not inferior at all. The entire Yunshan Mountain was decorated and surrounded by lanterns. Looking up from the bottom of the mountain, it was as if there was a dreamy fairy palace on the mountain. Chumo, why don't you go back to Chang'an for the festival? Maybe you can bump into a lady on the street. If you two catch each other's eye, Uncle Cheng will be very gratified. After Li Zixuan came to the brightly lit academy, he met Qing Chumo, Li Tai, Sun Zifan, and the others who were fighting bandits on the lawn in front of Guanghua Building. He couldn't help but make fun of them. There was no other way. Qing Chumo was the only leftover man among them. If he didn't make fun of him, who else could he make fun of? Ah, what lady? Pair of sharp, eh? Qing Chumo didn't hear too clearly. He saw that Li Tai in addition to a pair of Ks and quickly threw out a pair of As. Can't afford it. Li Tai replied subconsciously. Lady. Pair of As. Can't afford it. On the other hand, Li Zixuan was dumbfounded and almost laughed out loud, because the unintentional conversation between these two guys reminded him of some modern jokes. Cough, cough. He coughed twice and shook off the nonsensical thoughts in his mind. Then, he repeated the words just now to Qing Chumo. Lady? Forget it. Those ladies from the noble families in Chang'an were all so weak that they couldn't even lift a finger. They were so weak that they couldn't even stand a gust of wind. Fighting bandits is more fun. Come, come, come. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, straight. Ching Chumo curled his lips and complained. In the blink of an eye, he continued to join the battle. Chapter 1188. Yamacho. Will there be lanterns at the academy tonight? After the game, a piece of paper appeared on Ching Chumo's forehead. While the cards were being shuffled, Li Tai raised his head and asked Li Zixuan. Of course. Not only will there be lanterns, but there will also be riddles. The riddles will begin at 5:45 p.m. Li Zixuan nodded. Riddles? Are they going to write riddles on the lanterns for people to guess? Li Tai was puzzled. Although lanterns were popular in the Tang Dynasty, riddles had not appeared yet. Riddles were riddles written on lanterns. They originated from China's folk and were later turned into riddles by scholars. They had a long history in China. During the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period, there were riddles. During the Qin and Han dynasties, riddles were written creations. During the Three Kingdoms period, riddles were popular. However, it was not until the Song dynasty that riddles officially appeared. People tied riddles to colorful lanterns for people to guess. Li Zixuan nodded and praised. That's right. The riddles are riddles written on lanterns. Every time you guess a lantern correctly, you will receive a small prize. After the riddles are over, you can take the lanterns and go to the teachers to receive your prize. In addition, the 3 students who correctly guess the most riddles will receive a special prize. Alright. As for the detailed rules, Mr. M.O. will tell you next time. Since the teachers at the academy were working on the 16th of the first month, those who lived far away had arrived at the academy earlier today. Otherwise, they would not be able to find anyone to help organize such a grand riddle-guessing event. What special prize? Ching Chumo's eyes lit up as he asked. Li Zixuan rolled his eyes and said unhappily, No matter what the prize is, what does it have to do with you? He did not believe that this idiot could get first place in the riddles. Feeling Li Zixuan's contempt, Ching Chumo said unhappily, F***CK. Yamacho, what do you mean by this? Although I'm not good at all subjects, I'm definitely better at guessing riddles than Chin K, okay? I've been playing with this since I was a child, and I'm tired of it. He didn't know if this idiot was bragging or not, but strangely, Li Tai didn't refute him. However, Li Zixuan definitely didn't believe this idiot. He curled his lips and said, Enough, brat, keep bragging. You guys continue playing, I'm going to look for Mr. M.O. At 5:45 p.m., the riddle-guessing competition began on time. There were 5 lantern matrices set up in 5 different places in the academy, which meant that tonight's riddle-guessing activity was divided into 5 teams. The students could choose any team to participate in the riddle-guessing activity. After all, there were quite a number of students in the academy at this time. If they were all placed together, it would seem very crowded. In every square array of lanterns, there were more than 10 teachers from the academy maintaining order and tallying the results. Li Zixuan was not bluffing when he said that the top 3 students with the best results would receive special rewards. He really had prepared 3 special rewards for tonight. 2 big ones and 2 small ones. Type a word. Li Tai stared at a piece of paper under the lantern and murmured. In fact, guessing riddles was not his strong point. This was because it was similar to brain teasers, which required a lot of imagination. Last year, when the Strange Taste Pavilion first opened, he, who had just finished reading Journey to the West, wanted to recruit Li Zixuan and write novels for him. At that time, Li Zixuan had set 10 questions and claimed that if he could answer one correctly, he could go back with him and write novels for him for free for 3 years. But who would have thought that he couldn't answer a single question correctly out of the 10 questions and was beaten black and blue? It was all because his imagination wasn't big enough. Hey! It's a Qin word. Haha. Isn't this too easy? As Li Tai frowned and pondered, Ching Chumo's voice suddenly came from beside him. This guy's arrogant laughter immediately attracted everyone's attention. Wang Ji, who was in the crowd, laughed and said, "Yo! Not bad, not bad. I didn't expect someone to guess a lantern riddle right so quickly. And it's Ching Chumo. Haha. I'll give you 1 point." After that, he lowered his head and added 1 point to Ching Chumo in his little notebook. Ching Chumo laughed proudly and opened the next level. Noodles but no mouth, feet but no hands. You can eat rice and drink wine. Make a family of furniture. Hee hee. I've got it. Ching Chumo seemed to have the help of God tonight. As soon as he finished reading the next riddle, he immediately shouted, "It's the table. Is it, Mr. Wang?" Wang Ji was surprised. He thought that Ching Chumo's usual grades were not good. Why was he like a child prodigy when he guessed the riddle? The answer came out of his mouth easily, and his accuracy was surprisingly high. That's right. It's the table. Ching Chumo, at another point. The students were in an uproar. They all looked at Ching Chumo in surprise. At the same time, they also sighed in their hearts that this riddle was very interesting. It was much more interesting than just guessing riddles. Chonyo, how can you guess so accurately? When did you become so good? Sun Zifen could not help but tug at Ching Chumo's arm and wonder. Ching Chumo said proudly, "Hee hee. What else could it be? It's because I'm a prodigy." Sun Zifen rolled his eyes and almost spat out last night's meal. F***ck. Stop bragging, Chumo. You call yourself a prodigy? Your grades are not even as high as mine in every exam. If you're a prodigy, then what am I? Tell me the truth, don't talk nonsense. Ching Chumo looked embarrassed. He scratched his head and said the truth, "Hee hee. Actually, there are many riddles here that I've seen before. At that time, my favorite thing to do was to guess riddles. I used this to win a lot of money from Zhang Sun Chong." Zhang Sun Chong, who was guessing the riddles in another square of lanterns, could not help but sneeze. Ching Chumo continued to break through all the obstacles, and his score continued to soar. Li Tai, who followed behind Ching Chumo, had seen more and more of the lantern riddles. He also began to understand some of the rules, and the riddles he solved slowly increased. The rest of the students showed their magical powers and displayed their intelligence. They wanted to get more prizes. Some people even wanted to fight for the top 3 places to get the so-called special prize. The academy suddenly became a sea of joy. The festive atmosphere was not worse than some places in Chang'an City. After 2 hours, Li Zishuan announced the end of the lantern riddles. The students received their prizes from the teachers of the academy according to the number of lanterns they guessed. The prizes were not expensive. They were just some small wooden animal carvings sold in the Wonderful Taste Pavilion. Compared to that, the students were more curious about the special prize Li Zishuan mentioned. Under everyone's gaze, Li Zishuan finally said loudly, "Next, I'll announce the top 3 of this lantern riddles. First place, Ching Chumo. Second place, Li Yen. Third place, Zhang Sun Chong. These 3 students will receive a copy of the Interesting Mathematical Questions collection, compiled by me." Crack. This was the sound of vomiting blood and heartbreak. Chapter 1189. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Bam bam bam. After the riddles, it was time for the fireworks show. Several plates of fireworks were lit at the same time, and a spectacular scene of thousands of flowers blooming appeared in the sky. The fireworks on New Year's Eve had already left a very shocking impression on the students, so the students didn't make a big fuss like last time. However, the beauty of the fireworks had once again conquered them. At this moment, the students were all looking up at the colorful fireworks in the sky, dazzled and dazzled. At the same time, in Chang'an City, in the sky above the palace, a few bright flames suddenly appeared without any warning. Then, they exploded in the sky, and a few huge fireworks bloomed proudly in the night sky. They were colorful and extremely gorgeous. The ever-changing fireworks gracefully unfolded her smiling face in light yellow, silver, green, light purple, clear blue, and pink. It was too beautiful to behold. The petals fell like rain, falling one after another. People seemed to be able to touch them, but when they stretched out their hands, they couldn't touch anything. In an instant, whether they were shopping, looking at the lanterns, or flirting in Chang'an City, all of them turned their eyes to the direction of the palace in the north at the first moment. "It's fireworks! There are fireworks in the palace!" someone suddenly exclaimed. On New Year's Eve, hundreds of thousands of people in Chang'an City went to the foot of Yun Mountain to watch the fireworks festival. Therefore, when the palace released the fireworks tonight, someone immediately recognized it. "Wow! These are fireworks! So beautiful!" The ladies who came out to the Lantern Festival tonight were seeing the legendary fireworks for the first time, and their hearts were instantly hooked. Since ancient times, beautiful things had always been a fatal attraction to women. "Huanlong, these fireworks are so beautiful. Can you personally set off a plate of fireworks for me in the future?" This kind of creature not only existed in modern times but also in ancient times. However, at this time, there were actually many young ladies who were infatuated with fireworks. This made the infatuated men who wanted to take advantage of tonight's date suffer, because they had already asked around and found out that fireworks were not sold anywhere. "Wanru, it's not that I don't want to, but these fireworks can't be bought at all." But how would the ladies who lived in the boudoir for a long time know about this? In their impression, what in the world couldn't be bought with money? Humph! What can't be bought? How could he not be able to buy it? The way I see it, you just can't bear to. I misjudged you. Let's not meet again. Hey, Wanru, listen to me. I didn't lie to you. Alas, it was supposed to be an exceptionally festive lantern festival or Valentine's Day. Who would have thought that because of the fireworks, it would become a parting day for these infatuated men and resentful women? Countless people would probably not be able to sleep tonight. Swish, swish, swish. Bang, bang, bang. The fireworks in the palace only lasted for about half an hour. As if it had been discussed beforehand, when the fireworks in the imperial palace finished, a few fireworks also appeared in the direction of Cheng's mansion. Those who didn't go to Yunshan to watch the fireworks show on New Year's Eve couldn't help but exclaim. Finally, they could see so many fireworks in Chang'an. After a night of fun, everyone went to bed very late into the night. For the students of Yunshan, the happiest thing on Shangyuan night was not watching the fireworks, but guessing riddles. As soon as this new type of game was released, it received the approval of most people. Furthermore, almost every student had won something last night. Although a small prize was not worth much, it was still a symbol of honor. Moreover, from the looks of it, the small handicrafts made by Strange Interest Pavilion were very pleasing to the eye. It would be a good choice to use it as a small ornament. However, for Ching Chumo, last night's memories weren't so wonderful. He had worked so hard to overcome all the obstacles and finally won first place. He thought that the mysterious prize Li Zishuan mentioned would be something about eating, drinking, and having fun. Who would have thought that it would be a collection of mathematical problems? Was this a F***king joke? This situation was like a kindergarten student drawing a lottery. A child won the special prize, but the prize was a chance to train for 2 months free of charge by a training organization. Was this a reward or a punishment? When Ching Chumo received this special prize, he was so angry that he almost tore it apart. Fortunately, Li Tai arrived in time and repeatedly asked Ching Chumo to transfer this special prize to him. Ching Chumo didn't have any objections. What this idiot didn't know was that the thing that he thought was trash was a treasure to Li Tai. This was because there were a lot of mathematical problems in this book. Moreover, they were personally compiled by Li Zishuan. The way of solving the problems was exquisite and the way of thinking was tricky. For mathematics enthusiasts, this book could definitely be called the Holy Book of Mathematics. The next day, Yunshan, Yanhuang College. At 7 in the morning, when most of the students were still asleep, Li Zixuan had already arrived at Yanhuang College. He gathered all the teachers for the first teachers' meeting of the new semester. His main task in the morning was to commend the teachers and form teachers of the classes who had the best results in last year's final exams, as well as those who had made outstanding contributions to the college. For example, Mo Lingwei, who built the astronomical telescope, Wang Ji, who produced sulfuric acid in the laboratory, and so on. The commendation meeting lasted until noon. Li Zixuan announced the end of the meeting and told the teachers that there would be a teacher's title evaluation meeting in the afternoon. After the meeting, Li Zixuan walked out of the college and went home for dinner. Husband, it's cooked. The dishes are cooked. As soon as he walked to the door, Han Yushi ran over happily and pulled Li Zixuan's hand. The dishes are cooked? Li Zixuan was puzzled when he heard that. He subconsciously said, "Wife, why are you so happy that the dishes are cooked? Let's go in and eat." Speaking of which, he thought that the dishes for lunch were cooked. Unexpectedly, Han Yushi quickly shook her head and tried to explain to Li Zixuan in detail, "Husband, that's not what I meant. It's the greenhouse behind our courtyard. Most of the vegetables inside are already cooked. Especially the cucumbers, they've already grown so long." As Han Yushi spoke, she gestured with her hands. Li Zixuan finally understood what his wife meant. He couldn't help but be shocked and said, "Are they really all cooked? So fast? Let's go. Wife, let's go to the greenhouse to harvest the vegetables." In his previous life, he was the son of a farmer. In this life, he still had a special feeling for the land. Now that he had grown vegetables in the greenhouse, it could be said that he was bursting with a sense of accomplishment. Chapter 1190. Not bad, not bad. Let's have a plate of cucumber salad with vinegar and minced garlic for lunch. It's delicious. Li Zixuan followed Han Yushi to his own greenhouse. What he saw was a patch of green. There were mustard greens, spinach, shepherd's purse, leeks, onions, lentils, eggplants, and cucumber sprouts climbing on the rattan frame. Seeing so much green in the middle of winter, his mood immediately improved. Spinach was brought back by Zhang Qian from the western regions during the Han Dynasty. Lentils were originally from India and were introduced during the Han and Jin dynasties. Eggplants were originally from Southeast Asia and India and were introduced to China during the Jin dynasty. Emperor Yang of the Sui dynasty was especially fond of it and named it Kunlun purple melon. Although the variety of fruits and vegetables in the Tang dynasty was not as much as in modern times, it was definitely not a small number. Looking at the variety of vegetables in front of him, Li Zixuan was very satisfied. When they had hot pot before the new year, the vegetables in it were just bean sprouts and tofu. Now that the vegetables in the greenhouse had matured, they could finally have a good combination of meat and vegetables when eating hot pot later. Husband. Han Yushi nodded and went in to pick the cucumbers. Although it was cold in winter and inconvenient to eat cucumbers, for the Li family who had heating, let alone cucumbers, they could even eat watermelons. Wow! He was actually able to grow vegetables in winter. Xiao Xian, your greenhouse is really amazing. After knowing that some of the vegetables in the greenhouse had matured, Li Jingma, Mrs. Li, and the 3 members of the Yi family hurried over to take a look. When they saw the vibrant vegetables in the greenhouse, Yi Guozhong was shocked. To him, the trip to Chang'an last year was not in vain. Not only did he resolve the misunderstanding with his daughter for many years, but he also saw more new things than he had seen in the first half of his life. Sometimes, he could not help but sigh at how fast the times changed. My good grandson is so capable. He did all the things that others would not even dare to dream of. Mrs. Yi looked at Li Zishuan proudly and praised him. Yi Fashion personally went up to take a look at the vegetables in the field. He pursed his lips and didn't say anything. This old-fashioned brat still felt that Li Zishuan had violated the natural laws of spring planting and autumn harvesting. At noon, a hot pot was set up in the courtyard again. Lan who used to have a special fondness for mutton rolls, only ate spinach, shepherd's purse today, especially the cabbage. The tender leaves were boiled in the hot pot for a moment, then dipped in the dipping sauce bowl, and put into the mouth to chew. It could be said to be fresh and juicy, perfectly neutralizing the saltiness of the dipping sauce. At the end, there was still the sweetness of the cabbage juice at the root of the tongue. It was simply an endless aftertaste. Brother, this dish is too delicious. How come Lan has never eaten such delicious spinach before? It wasn't that the world had changed too quickly, but that the great Tang didn't have any vegetables in the past during the winter. Li Zishuan smiled indulgently and said, eat more if it's delicious. The cabbage in the greenhouse in our backyard is all yours. Lan smiled sweetly, and very contentedly dipped some cabbage leaves into the hot pot with her chopsticks. Old master, how do the cabbage and spinach taste? Mrs. Li suddenly asked. She looked at Li Jingma, who was also busy dipping the cabbage, and smiled meaningfully. Fragrant. Really fragrant. Fragrant and sweet. This cabbage is much better than the cabbage at the end of autumn. And this cucumber, crispy and refreshing, it's really top grade. I didn't expect to be able to eat cucumbers in the harsh winter, it's really delightful. Li Jingma, who was eating very happily, didn't notice that Mrs. Li's smile was a little strange. He sighed a lot and didn't expect to be mercilessly interrupted by Mrs. Li. If I remember correctly, when Xian wanted to build a greenhouse to grow vegetables, someone said that if vegetables could be grown in the greenhouse in winter, he wouldn't eat a single one even if he starved to death. The room suddenly fell into a strange silence. Everyone put down their chopsticks and looked at Li Jingma with sparkling eyes. Obviously, everyone remembered who had said those words at that time. Cough, cough. Eat quickly. Eat quickly. Today's food is so delicious, don't waste it if it gets cold later. Li Jingma's face was red, and he glared at his wife, but Mrs. Li mercilessly glared back and secretly stepped on his foot. Mrs. Li now had her son and her family backing her up, so why would she be afraid of him? Father, we're eating hot pot. As long as the stove is on, the food won't get cold. Lan raised her head and corrected Li Jingma with a serious expression. Old Master Li almost vomited blood. He couldn't stay in this house anymore. His wife was mocking him, and even his daughter was against him. Lan eat quickly, don't talk. Father, you should eat quickly too. That was just a joke back then. At the critical moment, Li Zishuan couldn't bear to see his father embarrassed, so he spoke up to help him out. Li Jingma was crying in his heart. His son was still the best to him. Ha ha. Come. One for each of you. Have a taste. In the afternoon, Li Zishuan brought Fu to the conference room of the Academy's Guanghua building with a basket of freshly picked cucumbers. The conference room was already full. Li Zishuan smiled happily and instructed Fu. Now that San Bao had gone to Sichuan to look for ores, Fu was naturally promoted to Li Zishuan's #1 lackey. Cucumber. Yamacho, where did this cucumber come from? Yen Silu's eyes were about to pop out. He suddenly stood up and said in surprise, "Could it be from the palace? That's too precious. Yamacho, you should take it back." Li Gang was very knowledgeable. He knew that the palace could get fresh cucumbers from the soup bureau in winter, so he said that. Hearing this, the gentlemen in the meeting room all declined. "That's right. Yamacho. This cucumber is too precious, you should take it back." That's right. This is too precious." Li Zishuan waved his hand and laughed loudly. "Ha ha. Gentlemen, you don't have to decline. These cucumbers were planted by my family, not by the soup bureau. It's not expensive, not expensive. Everyone can have one cucumber. After eating, we'll continue the meeting. He planted it himself. When he said that, everyone in the room was even more shocked. How could he grow cucumbers in winter? Yen Silu said with a look of suspicion. Yamacho, are you joking? Although I heard that you have a hot spring in your courtyard, you can't grow so many cucumbers, right? Haha. Mr. Yen, who said that you can only grow vegetables next to a hot spring in winter. Everyone here will be the inheritors of engineering in the future. We engineering are good at doing things that seem impossible. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.